Chapter 787. Nie Mingyuan's divine soul avatar trembled violently as if he had been struck by lightning. His shoulders trembled rapidly. Blood and tears flowed from his eyes as he sobbed silently. That Li Mubai is so annoying. Help me kill him. Aren't you the demon king of hell now? Nie Xiumon's voice was both angry and happy. It was filled with shyness and tenderness. It was so pleasant and intoxicating. I don't want to kill you. Nie Mingyuan felt a sharp pain. It was the pain of his soul. It was more painful than having one's bones sucked, more painful than having one's heart torn apart, more painful than having one's skin peeled off, and 10 times more painful than being burned by fire. 100 times. At this moment he felt as if his divine soul avatar was about to explode. After killing Nie Xiun he regretted it. Yes, his regret could not be washed away even with all the water in the world. He had tried dozens of methods, countless magic treasures, medicines and flesh to help Nie Xiumen reconstruct her body, but they all ended in failure. This was the law of nature and also the law of heaven. Nie Mingyuan's demon body of hell and soul devourer were too strong. It was destined that his shattered body and divine soul could never be restored and reformed. Not to mention that he could not do it now. Even if he became a demon king he could not do it. The law of heaven was heartless after all. Demonic Tao was the end of the road. A single mistake was destined to be regretted for eternity. Now you are the strongest man in the world. Your burns are healed. I have been waiting for this day. Nie Xiumen beseeched him tenderly. Mignon, why don't you look back at Aunt? You are so cruel. Isn't it great that we can be together forever? Demon King, you can't look back, you can't. From the day you stepped into the demonic Tao you can't look back. Once you look back you will be doomed eternally. How can this Kong Teichu be so vicious? It's too scary. At this moment Brainhead and Green's divine souls were almost scared out of their wits. They roared loudly. Aunt! Nie Mingyuan's divine soul avatar murmured. His body trembled and he could no longer control himself. This voice was too real. Even though he knew deep in his heart that this was an illusion, he still couldn't help but want to take a look. It's all fake. I know it's all fake. I'll only take one more look and then I'll leave immediately. I'll fly far away, then condense my physical body and head to the ruins of immortality. When I reach the golden core level, I'll make a comeback and kill Jiang Tian to avenge you all. With this thought in mind, Nie Mingyuan's soul avatar slowly turned its head and glanced behind it. Nie Xiumen was dressed in a green Daoist robe. She was standing in the sky. Her smile was like a flower. She was looking at him with a smile. Mingyuan, you finally turned back. That pair of bright eyes were so gentle and doting, carrying with them lightning. It was as if they had passed through more than 10 years and returned to the past. That year they rode together through the dense camphor forest of Jinling on their way to school. Her eyes were as bright and gentle as they are now. That year he tasted her sweet and fragrant lips with a taboo dizziness. Her eyes reflected his own face like a dream or fantasy. That year in the theater box her gentle fingers ran through his hair. Her eyes were evasive and shy. Nie Mingyuan had underestimated his feelings for Nie Xiun. He murmured in a daze. If all of this can last forever, then maybe there won't be so many regrets in life. However, Nie Xiumen's smile gradually became cold and fierce. She instantly turned into a ferocious demon and roared angrily. Are you going to kill me? How can you have the heart to do that? How can you be so cruel? I was wrong. I regret it. Nie Mingyuan's soul avatar roared to the sky. It fluctuated violently, expanding and shrinking at times. It was very unstable and cracks appeared on it as if it was about to collapse. Demon Lord, go. This is fake. It's an illusion. No matter how the brain Daoist shouted, it was useless. He couldn't stop his demon heart from collapsing and couldn't persuade him to leave. Nie Xiumen suddenly changed again. Boom. She opened her bloody mouth and bit toward Nie Mingyuan. Go to hell. Die with me. Become a part of my body and never be separated. Xiong. Kill me as long as we're together. Nie Mingyuan's soul avatar didn't resist. It was instantly devoured by the psychic power and shattered. Boom. Boom. In the process of the collapse, Nie Mingyuan's divine soul actually experienced a series of earth-shattering explosions, which even destroyed Nie Xiumen several times. However, more and more Nie Xiun were formed. Some were demons in human form and some were sword-wielding. They came from all directions, slashing the Nieshirman into pieces before devouring it completely. After a while, heaven and earth became clear again. The small golden lake in Jiang Tian's forehead rippled. Several Nieshirman turned into streaks of golden light and entered Jiang Tian's mind. That was close. Jiang Tian wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He was still scared. If Niaming Yuan's soul had wanted to escape, Jiang Tian wouldn't have been able to stop and capture it with his current cultivation. Jiang Tian's divine gung metal body was extremely powerful. It could kill all Foundation establishment cultivators. However, his divine sense might not be stronger than the divine sense of the demon body of purgatory. If the divine sense of the demon body of purgatory wasn't bewitched, Jiang Tian wouldn't have been able to do anything. After all, this thing was a heaven-defying existence. However, in terms of cultivation experience, Niaming Yuan was too weak. Even the brain Daoist couldn't do it. In Jiang Tian's previous life, he had once killed several powerful figures with the devil body of purgatory, and he had used the method of destroying the heart acupoint. Jiang Tian used his divine sense to create all kinds of illusions and accurately destroyed Niaming Yuan's demon heart acupoint. It made Niaming Yuan's painful memories and gradually strengthened his self-destructive consciousness. At this time, Jiang Tian used his divine sense to transform into Nieshirman and easily devoured Niaming Yuan's soul. Of course, Jiang Tian used his divine sense to create all kinds of illusions that almost looked real. Especially when he directly made Niaming Yuan's divine sense fall into it and couldn't extricate himself. The consumption of his divine sense was not small. At this time, a wave of exhaustion hit him. But the harvest is quite good. I've devoured this demon's soul to strengthen my divine sense. My body can be used to refine peerless elixirs. Jiang Tian entered the barrier again and landed on the Taichu aircraft carrier. He chuckled and was very pleased. After devouring Niaming Yuan's soul, Jiang Tian's divine sense also became stronger. Jiang Tian looked into his divine sense and found a black sticky substance floating in it. This was Niaming Yuan's soul devourer divine sense. At this time, Jiang Tian's divine sense had already taken this soul devourer divine sense as his own. It had the attribute of a soul devourer. In this way, Jiang Tian's divine sense had become abnormally powerful without the need to cultivate. His soul energy had increased by tenfold or even hundredfold. After seeing Niaming Yuan's death, especially when they heard Jiang Tian say that he wanted to use his body to refine elixirs, many of the spectators were scared out of their wits. They knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly. Jiang Tian's majestic gaze swept across the crowd. All of the overlords were trembling and didn't dare to look at him. They lowered their heads and knelt on the ground. Situ Lei Dai, come here. In the end, Jiang Tian's gaze fell on Situ Lei and sneered. Master Kong, do you really dare to kill me? Senior Situ Shao, the founder of the Hong sect, has come out of the mountain. Situ Lei cowered like a quail in a storm. He didn't dare to step forward, but he still threatened Chen Fan. The battle between Jiang Tian and Situ Shao had taken place in the Severnaya Zemlya, and there were few witnesses. Moreover, Hao Taichong, Li Jiuyou, Zhou Xian, and Fia and others had either been killed by Jiang Tian or died in the sword tomb. Therefore, the news of the battle outside the sword tomb had not spread at all. If you dare to kill me, he will kill you too. You know, he is already an earth-level deity of the East. He might be able to fight with you. Situ Lei thought that Situ Shao hadn't encountered Jiang Tian yet. At this moment, he naturally brought up the founder of the Hong sect and wanted to threaten Jiang Tian. Hearing this, all the people present raised their heads slightly and secretly looked at Jiang Tian, wondering what Jiang Tian would do. After all, Situ Shao was also an earth-level deity with a lifespan of nearly 300 years. What's more, he practiced orthodox Eastern martial arts. They were afraid that he could defeat Cain. Besides, the Hong sect was also very powerful and had a strong foundation. Would Jiang Tian really dare to kill Situ Lei? Boom. All of a sudden, the sound of something breaking through the air like rolling thunder could be heard. A figure drew out streaks of cyan light, like a rainbow piercing through the sun, crossing a distance of several thousand meters and shooting over. It was Situ Shao. On the way, he had used the satellite phone to contact the Hong sect and had already learned about the cooperation between Situ Lei and the Gathering of Darkness. He knew something was wrong and hurried to catch up with Chen Fan. But Jiang Tian was too fast. Even though Jiang Tian was only relying on his physical strength, he couldn't catch up with him on the second-generation disposable flying sword given by Jiang Tian. But it was too late for him to try to contact Situ Lei. At this time the array had been formed and all electronic signals were blocked. It's over. The Situ family's bloodline is going to end. When he rushed over while panting, he saw the scene of Situ Lei and Jiang Tian challenging each other. He couldn't help but be scared silly. He was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. As soon as Situ Xiao arrived, many people were overjoyed and saw a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was still a chance to turn this battle around. After all, Situ Xiao was also an overlord who was stronger than Cain. If he led everyone to attack with all his might, they might be able to fight their way out of this strange array. Ha, Ancestral Master, you are finally here. Situ Lei's eyes lit up and he quickly stepped into the air to greet Chen Fan. He bowed deeply and said with joy, "Help me, Kong Teichu. Help me. Kong Teichu is going to kill me." Now that his backer was here, his courage was greatly boosted and he became even more arrogant. His eyes were filled with disdain and arrogance as he roared at Jiang Tian recklessly. "Kong Teichu, are you blind? Can't you see that my ancestral master is here? Why don't you kneel down and admit defeat? He is an earth-level deity who practices the orthodox arts of the Eastern Dao sect. He is not someone that Cain and the other vampires can compare with. Dare I ask, are you afraid? Are you afraid?" Chapter 788. You shut up. Situ Xiao was almost scared out of his wits, his face changed drastically. "I think you are the one who is blind." Smack. He slapped Situ Xiao hundreds of meters away and he fell into the sea like a drowning dog. "Grandmaster, why did you hit me?" Situ Lei came out of the sea with half of his face broken. He felt wronged and puzzled. "Vile spawn, how dare you disrespect Jiang Tianxian? If you dare to do it again, I will kill you." Situ Xiao was so angry that his entire body trembled, and his teeth almost broke from gritting them. "When I left, I told you not to act rashly. Who told you to attack Tianqing School? Who told you to cooperate with the Gathering of Darkness? How dare you offend Master Kong? Do you want to die? That is a real celestial immortal. How can you provoke him? Don't you have a brain?" If Situ Lei was not his direct great-great-grandson and was connected by blood, he would have already slapped him to death. "What?" Situ Lei was shocked when he heard this. His face was as pale as paper. He murmured, "Grandmaster, have you already? Idiot, hurry up and kneel down to Grandmaster Jiang." Situ Xiao wanted to cry but had no tears. After shouting, he quickly flew to Jiang Tian and knelt down in front of him, saying with a bitter face, "Master, please forgive this old man for disciplining him. This unworthy descendant has offended you. If you want to kill him, just say the word and the old man will obey." "Oh my God." Seeing this scene, Situ Lei was so shocked that he was tongue-tied, and his soul almost left his body. His feet swayed and he fell into the sea again, becoming a drowning dog again. "What? Master? An earth-level deity, the Grand Master of the Hong sect, called Kong Teichu Master? This is too shocking. Could it be that Kong Teichu has already defeated an earth-level deity? Could it be that he already had the strength to defeat an earthly immortal before he was trapped in the sword tomb? If that's the case, we're really here to seek death. We're actually challenging an earthen immortal." Seeing this, many experts from the dark world were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it and cold sweat dripped down their backs. At this moment, the moon-worshipping Wolf King had also arrived. He swung his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. He swept his gaze over the crowd of heroes and said proudly, "Outside the sword catacomb, the Icefield Wolf ancestor has already died at the hands of Master Kong. Situ Xiao and I have already acknowledged Master Kong as our master." In front of everyone, he admitted to being Jiang Tian's servant, but he wasn't ashamed at all. Instead, his eyes and expression were filled with pride. It was as if being able to become Jiang Tian's servant was something to be proud of, or even a great honor. Situ Xiao and the moon-worshipping Wolf King actually defer to Master Kong and call themselves servants. Aya, the Wolf King's arm is healed. It must be Master Kang's doing. Only he has such terrifying means. Many experts exclaimed. Their last glimmer of hope had been shattered, and their hearts sank into the abyss. Besides, you're all idiots. Master Kong is trapped in the sword catacomb. Bullshit. The Wolf King puffed out his chest and looked at them with disdain. He already knew about this time acceleration array. He purposely entered it and used it to advance his cultivation. These experts from the Dark World were too stupid. Master Kong was a visitor from the outer space. He was from an advanced civilization and had lived for tens of thousands of years. How could he not see through the crudely constructed array? These people actually came to provoke the heavenly clear sect without knowing the meaning of death. Simply brain damage to the extreme. This, oh my god, the day imprisonment array, was used by him. He used the day imprisonment array to advance his cultivation. I'm afraid he's already a sky immortal. In an instant, many experts' faces were ashen and dejected. Many emotions flashed through their eyes. Shock, fear, despair, frustration, and regret. Master Kong, we're just here to watch the battle. We don't want to be enemies with Tianqing School. Yeah, we're just here to watch. We don't want to be enemies with Master Kong. A group of people hurriedly shouted. At this time, the cultivation that Jiang Tian had displayed had scared them out of their wits. They couldn't control themselves at all. An Indonesian Grand Tame headmaster rushed to Jiang Tian and knelt down. He claimed that he wanted to be Master Kang's disciple and join Tianqing School. A Japanese kendo master stepped forward and said with a flattering face. He claimed that he was also a member of the Sakura Society and a disciple of Master Kong. He heard that the Covenant of Darkness was about to invade, so he came to help. Bullshit. What's your plan? Do you think you can hide it from us? Sasaki Aisha immediately rebuked these people. When the Sakura Society announced the war with the Covenant of Darkness, these Japanese overlords immediately withdrew from the Sakura Society and declared war on Tianqing School. In fact, at least half of the Dark Overlords present were there to help the Covenant of Darkness. However, their cultivation levels were too low, so they didn't join the fight. Instead, they were in the second echelon. They were waiting for the Covenant of Darkness to defeat the people of Tianqing School. Then they would swarm in and steal the treasures. Sasaki Aisha pointed out the accomplices of the Covenant of Darkness. Go to hell. Jiang Tian wouldn't show any mercy. With a swish, 10 flying swords shot out like cruise missiles. Bang, bang, bang. Everywhere the tip of the sword passed, corpses exploded apart one after another, and they transformed into a rain of sparkling and translucent flesh that rained down. These people were all overlords below the immortal state. They couldn't resist Jiang Tian's sharp flying swords. Each of the swords was as fast as lightning and killed 100 people in a second. Aya, run. These people were so scared that their souls almost left their bodies. They squeaked and screamed as they scampered away. But how could they run? Jiang Tian's 10 flying swords were like rainbows piercing the sun, cutting through the sky. Every time he would have to kill dozens or even hundreds of people. It was as easy as chopping vegetables. In the end, even the Transcendent Grandmasters were all killed. Only a few minions under the Transcendent State as well as some assassins and mercenaries were left. Such people wouldn't be able to pose a threat to the Tianqing sect even if they were given another 100 or 1,000 years. They were truly ants and Jiang Tian couldn't be bothered to kill them. Thank you, Jiang Tian, for sparing our lives. The flying swords flew into Jiang Tian's sky-swallowing demon gourd. The Dark Association experts who were still alive were so scared that they peed and shat themselves. They collapsed to the ground like mud and scrambled to kneel down, kowtowing and thanking Jiang Tian for his kindness. Master Kong, I know I was wrong. Ooh. I regret it so much. Situlei was so scared that he burst into tears. If it weren't for the ancestral master's timely arrival and Master Kang's mercy, he would have died a few times. Looking at the overlords kneeling on the ground, the people of Tianqing School were stunned. They couldn't believe it. We won. That was too easy. They had thought that the Covenant of Darkness would come with many powerful henchmen. Even if the sect master returned safely, they would have to fight for a few days. Who would have thought that the moment Jiang Tian made a move, it was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It was simply crushing an army of thousands. The Zhenyu Demon King and Cain, 2 Earth-level deities, 13 mortal deities, 53 immortal state warriors, and 2,000 overlords from the Dark World. It could be said that the overlords of the Dark World had gathered. Yi Zhantian's hands trembled and he couldn't believe it. But now they've all been wiped out by Master's sword alone. He has suppressed the world by himself. After this battle, the history of the entire world was rewritten. The entire Dark World withered, Its vitality was greatly damaged and it couldn't recover. There was no longer a world where many overlords dreamed and looked forward to fighting against each other. When a flower bloomed, 100 flowers would be killed. Now only Jiang Tian stood at the top, overlooking the world and suppressing the dark world. Many experts could only tremble in fear and prostrate themselves in worship. If the news of this battle gets out, I'm afraid the whole world will tremble. Red Sparrow sighed with a complicated expression. In fact, the whole world had been deeply shaken. When the Covenant of Darkness set out, the European Union coalition forces sent many large and small drones and reconnaissance aircraft to the battlefield. The European Union Joint Conference was held urgently, and many politicians and high-ranking officials watched the battle. Once the Covenant of Darkness eliminated Tianqing School, the European Union coalition forces would march straight in and occupy Sidoni. I think that this operation is still a little too conservative. We could have sent troops. At the joint conference, European Union President Jung spoke a little angrily. The joint conference had always been very democratic, and decisions were made by voting. Due to the operation of a large number of European dignitaries who settled in Sidoni's Immortal healing village, in the end, many European countries did not send troops. But Jung had been brooding about this. He thought that Jiang Tian's death in the Sword Tomb was the only chance for the European Union to eliminate Tianqing School and Sidoni. Now they had missed a good opportunity. It's better to be safe. Kong Teichu is dead. I think the Covenant of Darkness is enough. We just need to sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. A British military representative, a Navy general, said in a deep voice. Whether it's the Covenant of Darkness or Tianqing School, they are both forces that are not conducive to our rule. They are unstable factors that seriously affect the credibility of the government. If we don't let the Covenant of Darkness suffer losses, how can we eliminate the Covenant of Darkness in the future? It's also very troublesome. A general of the Italian Air Force with a thick cigar in his mouth said calmly. No matter what their views and attitudes were. But they all believed that with Kong Teichu's death, Tianqing School would definitely be eliminated this time. The question was how much damage the Covenant of Darkness would suffer. Chapter 789. There were many images on the big screen in the conference room. The gathering of darkness was aggressive. The 6 blood ancestors, the leaders of various forces, and even the Zhenyu Demon King showed up. However, there were many twists and turns in the battle. Zhao Xueqing was as powerful as the blood ancestor Cain. Is she Kong Teichu's wife? Is she the one who killed the French speaker? She's so powerful. She's also evolving. Her combat power is constantly improving. Fortunately, the Zhenyu Demon King is very powerful. The Gathering of Darkness has 1,000 years of history. It's more powerful after all. Just as Nie Mingyuan was showing off his devilish might and everyone thought that the Heavenly Clear sect would definitely be defeated, Jiang Tian's sudden appearance instantly shocked everyone. What? Kong Teichu is not dead? The general of the Italian Air Force jumped up in shock. Fortunately, we didn't send out our troops. The British military representative's face was pale and his heart was palpitating. Kong Teichu is not dead and he killed so many people with one slash. Jung was so frightened that his eyes almost popped out. He held a cup of coffee to hide his change of expression. However, the coffee cup collided with his teeth and made a sound like a machine gun. At this time he felt that his face was swollen. He had just said that Jiang Tian had died, but now he came back safe and sound, and his cultivation had become so powerful. After that, the image on the big screen twisted and trembled for a while before it went completely black. The conference room was dead silent. Hundreds of senior officials in the European army and political circles all looked at the dark big screen in shock. Their faces were pale and their eyes were full of fear, but they couldn't make a sound. I think we have to give Kong Teichu a reasonable explanation. Finally, the general of the British Air Force broke the silence with a trembling voice. Jung was silent for a long time with a gloomy expression on his face. Then he sighed. Yes, otherwise the whole of Europe will be in chaos. After this sigh, he seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. His back, which was as straight as a sword, was now hunched over. He knew that his political career was over. Beijing Song Family Manor. After Song Lingshuang entered the Immerse sword sect, Song Beishan announced that he would completely withdraw from the political scene of Wuxia. Moreover, many of his disciples had left the system. In a short period of time, the Song family had evolved into a business family. However, many observers commented that the Song family's move was a desperate attempt at survival. Perhaps they would break out of their cocoon and evolve into an even more powerful martial arts family. In recent days, the Song family could be said to be beaming with joy. Especially after hearing that Jiang Tian might be dead, Song Beishan, who had been sober for 3 years, drank 3 to 5 bottles of Maotai aged wine that night. His eyes were hazy with drunkenness as he slammed the table and shouted, "This is great. The heavens have opened their eyes. Even the Dark Parliament can't stand this anymore. They want to kill this thug Jiang Tian. That's great. I heard that the Covenant of Darkness has mobilized all its forces to attack Sidoni and encircle Tianqing School. Even the European Union is supporting them." That night at the dinner table, the second son of the Song family shouted excitedly. "Sure." Song Beishan smiled smugly. "This Kong Teichu is too arrogant. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You're just a little brat and you only know a little bit of martial arts. You want to establish the kingdom of Sidoni? You want to learn from the South and call yourself a king? The United States and the European Union are not going to sit back and do nothing. Those big organizations in the dark world are not going to let this go. Now they have ruined Qingqing's life." Suddenly, Song Beishan's internal phone rang. It was his old friend Lu Zhenghua. Lu Zhenghua had been relieved of all his duties and the entire Lu family had been demoted. The Lu family had transformed into a business family. However, after the battle with Jiang Tian, the Lu family had realized the importance of martial arts. They recruited people all over the world and roped in many real and fake martial Dao masters, forming a loose martial Dao family. They were keeping a low profile and observing the situation. Once Jiang Tian was dead, they would rise again. Good news must have come. Tianqing School is gone. Song Beishan picked up the phone with a smile. However, after a few words, Song Beishan's smile froze on his face. His phone fell to the ground. "What's wrong, Lord?" a family member asked. Song Beishan said in a daze, "The one with the surname Jiang didn't die. He came back and won." "What? He won the Gathering of Darkness?" Everyone was shocked. Everyone screamed like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. It was as if they had been struck by a bolt from the blue, and they froze on the spot as if they had lost their parents. "Don't worry about it. He is far away in Sidoni and we are in China. We have nothing to do with him." Song Shuangyan's father scolded angrily. At this moment he felt very uncomfortable. If he had chosen Jiang Tian, he would be Jiang Tian's father-in-law. He would be Sidoni's king. "No. We have to leave Wuxia tonight." "No." Song Beishan suddenly said. "What? Does Jiang Tian dare to kill people in Wuxia? We didn't do anything to him." Everyone was puzzled. Just a few days ago, Song Beishan said that the Song family was about to rise. Why were they running away? Go quickly." Song Beishan's face was pale and trembling violently. Only he knew that he was the one who provided the long formation base and defense to the Gathering of Darkness. If Yi Zhantian found out, he would not let him go. Jiang Tian would not let him go. Wuxia officials would not let him go. At this moment he regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. When Nie Mingyuan secretly visited him, he saw Nie Mingyuan's various supernatural powers. He thought that Nie Mingyuan could destroy the long formation in Tianqing School and dominate the world. If he helped Nie Mingyuan, he would be a meritorious official and become Nie Mingyuan's agent in Wuxia. In that case, the Song family would rise, wouldn't it? But he did not expect that he would be outsmarted by his own cleverness. He went for wool and came home shorn. At this time, the entire North Bay of Sidoni had gradually calmed down. Jiang Tian invited many people who really came to help Tianqing School to enter the sect's Taoist temple. In the sect, the array was running continuously. The spiritual qi was so dense that it was like rain. Spirit herbs and medicine were everywhere, which shocked a group of people. "Son, you're finally back." Zhang Wanqing hugged Jiang Tian with tears streaming down her face. She kissed Jiang Tian several times on the cheek, which made Jiang Tian feel a little embarrassed. Seeing this, the girls covered their mouths and laughed. But Zhang Wanqing said with conviction, "What's wrong with kissing my own son?" After a while of idle chatter, Jiang Chongqing took Jiang Tian's hand and smiled with relief. Jiang Tian Tianqing School has really done a great job this time. Master Hui Zhantian and the others have wiped out all the dark overlords who invaded Wuxia. Even the chief personally called to express his gratitude. Jiang Tian was not surprised by this. Nowadays many ideas have changed. Martial arts overlords have been regarded as the last trump card of a country. Tianqing School had preserved the martial arts heritage of Wuxia. How could the chief and the leaders not be grateful? He smiled faintly and said, "No matter when or where, I have never forgotten that I am a descendant of the Yellow Emperor. The same goes for the people of Tianqing School. It is our duty to help the martial arts community of Wuxia." At this time Yi Zhantian put away the satellite phone, walked over and said quickly, "Master, we have received news that Lu Xinghua of the Lu family provided the distribution map of the major martial arts sects and forces in Wuxia to the Covenant of Darkness. And the Song family revealed the location of the Huaxiaolong Formation and its defense to Niemingyuan. They are still lying. It is time to wipe out these two families." Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with a trace of sharpness and a grim smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The president of the European Union, Yung, called Master Kong and expressed his sincere congratulations to Jiang Tian for annihilating the Covenant of Darkness. He also invited Jiang Tian to visit the European Union for a state visit. At this time, Hera walked over and said with a complicated expression, "The European Union congratulated me. How interesting." Jiang Tian was amused by these people. Didn't they arrest Jiang Bangxia and ask our country for compensation? Yung and the European Union officials claimed that everything that happened before was a misunderstanding and that they were forced by the Covenant of Darkness. Hera shook her head gently and a trace of mockery appeared at the corner of her mouth. These politicians changed their sails according to the wind. They were two-faced and had changed from arrogance to deference. Could be said that they were extremely shameless. When Jiang Tian wasn't here they were aggressive, shouting about fighting and killing, jumping 3 feet high into the air, arrogant and despotic to the extreme. When they saw that Jiang Tian had defeated the Covenant of Darkness, they immediately knelt down and begged for mercy, flattering and fawning. "I won't let any of the supporters and henchmen of the Covenant of Darkness go," Jiang Tian said coldly. Any organization was made up of people, and people were also the most important factor in the operation of an organization. It was the same for small families, enterprises, associations and large cities, countries and the United Nations. As long as you intimidated people, you could intimidate the organization. This time Jiang Tian wanted to show the world the consequences of provoking Jiang Tian and Tianqing School. "Immortal Jiang Tian, we have prepared everything." Hera handed a document to Jiang Tian. It was a list of dozens of pages and photos. They were the controllers of major families and enterprises in Europe, Canada, America, and even some members of the royal family. It turned out that Niemingyuan had swept the world and reorganized the Covenant of Darkness, gaining many believers and supporters. The European Union was pressured by the rich allies of Sidonia and decided not to send troops. It was these families and enterprises that donated tens of billions of dollars to support Niemingyuan's crusade against Tianqing School and Sidonia. This is the list provided by the Queen of Heaven, Hera. Later, our intelligence agency carried out additional investigations. There will be no fish left out of the net and no one will be killed unjustly. Observer Merrill reported from the side. "Very good. Hera Merrill, thank you for your hard work." Jiang Tian smiled faintly then said coldly, "Tell the European Union that they can't reveal anything about the battle in the Gulf of Tonkin. Don't alert the enemy. This time I'm going to kill everyone in the world and make them tremble in fear." Instantly, a monstrous murderous aura soared into the sky and enveloped the entire Tianqing sect's dojo. It was as if a primordial ferocious beast had awakened, shaking Zhou Xian to the point that she could not withstand the pressure and retreated a few steps. Chapter 790. At night. Wisteria Manor, Vienna, Austria. The blue Danube River flowed past the front door. Standing at the top of the manor one could see the Alps in the distance. Listening to the sound of the wind and the flowing water, one felt as if they were in the Wuxia. Only the top families in the area could feel the tranquility and peace that God had bestowed upon them. This used to be a royal manor. It had a history of hundreds of years. The Romanesque, Gothic and Baroque buildings were perfectly blended and complemented each other. It gave people a feeling of classical solemnity and holiness. Now it was the property of Cameron, the chairman of the Glaxo Group, the #1 pharmaceutical company in Europe and the top 5 in the world. Cameron was 50 years old. He had studied at the Royal Academy of Life Sciences and the London School of Economics. He had a double doctorate in finance and biological sciences. Because of his great contributions to the field of life sciences, he was conferred the title of Viscount by the British royal family. Now in the manor the lights were brilliant and the music was melodious. A grand cocktail party was being held on the lawn to celebrate the fruits of Cameron's most successful investment in his life. Cameron was a man of great taste. He was born in Vienna and he loved opera. His 3 sons and 1 daughter were all well educated and good at singing operas. At the moment, they were singing a part of one of the top 10 operas in the world, Jester, in front of their father. Love is the sun of the soul. It is above all. Lovely girl, love me as I love you dearly. Gentle words filled my young girl's heart. It was like the voice of the heavens. The deep bass and the sonorous soprano complemented each other, rising and falling one after another, forming a beautiful duet. The noble gentlemen and elegant ladies around them held their wine glasses and listened quietly. Their eyes were shining with admiration. So moving, it's so nice. It's even better than the professional actors of the National Grand Theatre. No wonder it's called the House of Arts. The song was over. Cameron nodded with a smile and applauded softly. Everyone's emotions surged like a tidal wave, praising him endlessly. Father, your investment this time is really wise. His daughter, Lena, walked over with a glass of red wine in her hand. Over the past few days, the rich people who didn't participate in the donation to the Dark Congress are all regretting it. They are all trying to please me and ask me to introduce them to the amazing and powerful Nie Yen. Lena was wearing a red evening gown. She was very beautiful, tall and elegant. She was one of the top socialites in Europe, no less than Annalyn of the Rothschild family. Now many sons of tycoons, upstarts and male celebrities were vying to pursue her. Nie is a true god, a mystical Eastern immortal. Cameron raised his glass of red wine at his daughter, but he snorted coldly in his heart. How could those people get to know each other? If I hadn't started worshipping a powerful count 10 years ago, I wouldn't even have had the chance to see the Demon Lord. There's only one chance. They've already missed it. How can there be a second time? Cameron's eldest son snorted in disdain. He was tall and straight with one hand in his pocket. His face was handsome and he exuded an air of nobility. He wore a tailcoat tailored for him by a famous Italian fashion designer, just like a real aristocrat. Father, if the Dark Congress wins this time, can we get Sidoni's St. Essence Immortal Healing Village? Cameron's second son asked with a hint of greed in his eyes. If one looked closely, they would find that there was a hint of evil in the depth of his pupils. Even 3 meters away from him one could feel a clear chill. Immortal Healing Village? That belongs to someone even more powerful. But we can get the patent of all the medicines of the Medicine King Group. Cameron said with a smug smile. Great. If we can get the patent of the Medicine King Group, we are destined to dominate the world and even become the top medical group in the world. His second son said excitedly. That bitch Zhang Wanqing didn't give me face before. Now humph, she's going to be destroyed. Cameron smiled smugly with a hint of resentment and mockery. Previously, when the Medicine King Group entered the European market, Cameron had met Zhang Wanqing and wanted to get a share of the profits. But how could Zhang Wanqing agree? She declined politely and chose to set up her own sales network. After all, the Medicine King Group's products were so effective that they were already famous all over the world. They didn't need their sales network. From Zhang Wanqing's point of view, it was a normal and reasonable business decision, but Cameron held a grudge. Now the Dark Congress was about to defeat Tianqing School and invade Sidoni. Cameron was simply overjoyed. He had told the Bloodline Earl not to kill Zhang Wanqing. When the time came, he would visit her in prison and make her kneel on the ground and call him father. At this moment, the third son, who was wearing an aristocratic high school uniform, said worriedly, "But father, I saw some moon-worshipping wolves on the Werewolf Home Forum. They said that Immortal Jiang is also very powerful. He chose to enter the sword's grave and won't die. Also, rumor has it that there was an earth-shattering explosion on the Sword Tomb Island a few days ago. Could it be that Kong Taechu is still alive? My cute little brother, you think too much. Lena was full of mockery and disdain. Also, the news on the Werewolf Home forum is fake. Only idiot high school students like you would believe it. Haha, even if Kong Taechu isn't dead, he's still nothing compared to the Genyu Demon King. Cameron laughed heartily. Our family is destined to be revitalized. So what if Kong Taechu is alive? If he dares to come, I'll kill him with one punch. Cameron's second son said arrogantly and haughtily. He was once purified by the blood breed that the family worshipped. To put it bluntly, he was tainted with part of the blood breed's blood. In terms of strength, he was a viscount of the blood breed. Excuse me, are you going to kill me with one punch? Suddenly, a mocking voice sounded out of nowhere. Everyone looked up. They saw a Wuxia young man in a plain long robe standing proudly in the air. He appeared 100 meters above the manor. Who is it? Lena was shocked. Then she forced a smile as if to comfort herself. Is he hooked on a wire? It's Kong Taechu. Cameron's face stiffened as if he had lost his parents. Deep fear appeared in the depths of his eyes. There was no need for him to give the order. A group of well-trained bodyguards in black rushed out with all kinds of guns in their hands and fired at Zhang Tian. Zhang Tianli did not care about the incoming bullets. He casually took out a flying sword and with a whoosh he rushed over. In just a second, more than 30 bodyguards in black were penetrated and fell to the ground like rain. In a blink, a few transcendent overlords who had awakened their bodies rushed out of the manor and came to the lawn. They all looked at Zhang Tian in shock. Kong Taechu is here. Oh God, he's not dead. It seems that the Dark Council has also failed. What should we do? A few experts were hesitating whether or not they should fight to the death. Kong Taechu of Tianqing School wants to eliminate the remaining forces of the Dark Council. Anyone who stands in his way will die. Zhang Tian's voice contained a strand of divine sense, and it smashed down like a bolt of lightning, shaking the entire manor to the point that the ground and mountains shook. A few grandmasters in Europe vomited blood and knelt on the ground, trembling. Zhang Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. With a wave of his hand, Cameron's second son involuntarily flew into Zhang Tian's hand. He grabbed Zhang Tian's arm with both hands and his face turned purple. It seemed that he wanted to explain something. Unfortunately, he shouldn't have offended Kong Taechu. Zhang Tian clenched his right hand, directly crushing his neck into pieces. The man's eyes were bulging and his tongue was sticking out. He couldn't explain a word even if he had the chance. Because he shouldn't have offended Kong Taechu. Zhang Tian patted the sky-devouring magic gourd and directly threw the man's body into it. Cameron was furious when he saw his son was killed, but he immediately suppressed his anger and bowed deeply. God, as long as you let my family go, I will give you all my family property. However, he never had the chance to raise his head again. Because he shouldn't have offended Kong Taechu. Did you know that Nathan from the Rothschild family said the same thing? His wealth is about the same as yours. Haven't you heard of his story and his ending? Zhang Tian landed on the ground and flicked his finger. With a chi sound, Cameron's head exploded. Zhang Tian didn't have any pity in his eyes. After throwing Cameron's body into the gourd, the others had already reacted and fled in all directions. God, don't kill me. I'm your worshipper and a user of the dark net. I've always been cheering for you. I don't agree with my father's decision, but no one believes me. Seeing Zhang Tian slowly walking towards him, Cameron's third son, who was in high school, was so scared that he wet his pants and fell to the ground. He kicked his feet on the ground and trembled as he stepped back and begged with tears in his eyes. In your next life, if you encounter something like this again, you can choose to cut ties and leave the family. A voice as cold as winter came from Zhang Tian's mouth. A black soul devourer emerged and swallowed his soul. The young man's body stiffened and his eyes turned gray. He had already lost all signs of life and died an unnatural death. However, he was able to leave his corpse intact. This was already Zhang Tian's greatest mercy. At this moment, Lena's face turned pale. She ran toward the door in her high heels with tears on her face. She didn't want to die. Her wealth was comparable to that of a country, her status was high, her life was luxurious, and she had many gentle and handsome boyfriends. She hadn't enjoyed all of this enough. However, how could she escape from Zhang Tian's pursuit? Jiang Tian's right hand made a grabbing motion. She had already flown back dozens of meters, and her slender neck fell into Jiang Tian's large hand. Lena's slender body trembled violently. Her full breasts rippled, revealing a large area of her snowy white skin. A pair of astonishingly long and slender jade-like legs were moving crazily, and pale yellow urine was flowing down along her legs. Deep fear appeared in her beautiful eyes. She didn't want to die. She screamed and begged for mercy. Unfortunately, she shouldn't have offended Kong Teichu. Without hesitation, Jiang Tian broke her neck and stored her body in the sky-devouring demonic gourd. Chapter 791. There were already 4 corpses floating in the sky-devouring magic gourd. After that, Jiang Tian killed all 23 members of Cameron's family. Their souls were devoured by the soul devourer, and their corpses were tossed into the sky-devouring magic gourd. Then he ascended into the sky and flew away. How did the Cameron family offend Jiang Taichu, this killing god? Many of the guards were spared because they had knelt down in time. But now they were scared out of their wits and their faces were pale. They offended Kong Teichu and didn't tell us. Are they trying to kill us? Some of the guards were so angry that their faces turned green. They wanted to kill a few of the Cameron family members to vent their anger. Cameron also had a younger brother who was having fun in a bar. After receiving the message from his family's bodyguard, he had already taken a private jet and fled into the distance. However, how could he possibly escape from Jiang Tian's pursuit? Jiang Tian was going to start a massacre and make a tower of bones for the upper class of the European Union. He had to get the corpses. Otherwise, he could use Cameron's bloodline to cast the karmic severing curse and kill him easily from 100 miles away. Jiang Tian waved his hand and used Cameron's remaining blood to create a talisman in the air. A red dot immediately appeared in his divine sense. A Gulfstream V private jet streaked across the sky and flew into the distance. Its destination was the United States. In the eyes of Cameron's brother, only the United States could protect him. After all, it was the world's largest country. At this moment he was sitting on pins and needles in his seat. He kept calling his friends who held important positions in the military, hoping that they would send fighter jets to protect him. However, his fate was already sealed because his clan had offended Jiang Taichu's name. The Austrian military was scared out of their wits. They didn't dare to offend Jiang Tian. Otherwise, Austria would end up like France. They would end up like France's President Nicolas Sarkozy. So they rejected his request without hesitation. When Jiang Tian's figure appeared in the cabin like a ghost, the flight attendants were scared out of their wits. Many of the stewardesses were scared out of their wits. They cowered under their chairs, not daring to move. The man knew that his time was up. His phone slipped to the ground. He forced himself to calm down and begged in despair. I only ask that Immortal Jiang leave my corpse intact. That decision was my brother's own will. Jiang Tian did not say a word. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, he flicked his finger and a golden light pierced through his chest. The man immediately died. After collecting the soul, Jiang Tian didn't say a word. His figure flickered as he left the cabin and flew off into the distance. Morning, Venice, Italy. Alleys meandered, and the Grand Canal passed through bridges of various styles, flowing unhurriedly. An ancient building stood by the river. Half of its base had been submerged in the water for hundreds of years. It was surrounded by aquatic plants and covered in layers of moss. Amidst the faint ripples, the orange-red, beige, bright red and pink-white walls were brimming with different styles, like a beautiful gouache painting. In a deserted alley, Jiang Tian suddenly appeared and walked out unhurriedly. He was dressed in casual clothes like an ordinary tourist. While sightseeing, he made a phone call and said in a commanding tone, "Young, if the news is leaked and these people start to escape, I will hold you responsible." "Yes, Master Kong. Don't worry, these people will definitely not be able to escape. They are all restricted from leaving the country." On the other side of the phone, the President of the European Union said while wiping cold sweat. Jiang Tian hung up the phone and swaggered toward a castle-like building. Suddenly, a soft voice sounded in his ears. "Jiang Tian, why are you here? Who are you talking to on the phone? You are so domineering." Jiang Tian turned around to look. It was actually an old acquaintance. Donghai's socialite Fu Longjun. But since Jiang Tian left Donghai, he had never seen her again. Later, Mr. Tang occasionally mentioned that she did not marry Tang Jianfeng and was able to enter the Tang family. After not seeing her for a few years, this woman was now wearing jewelry and branded clothes, armed to the teeth. Her jade face was shining, and she was more dignified, elegant, and noble than before. It seemed that she was living a good life. But after all, she was an irrelevant person. Jiang Tian did not bother to pay attention to her. Without saying a word, he turned around and continued to walk toward the magnificent castle. Jiang Tian, I heard that you later made a comeback in Sidoni? The Medicine King Group is sold all over the world. Fu Lanjun followed him gracefully in her black Gucci high heels as she said with a charming smile. But anyone could hear the sarcasm in her tone. Since Jiang Tian's rise, Fu Lanjun had been paying close attention to Jiang Tian's news. She did not know about other things such as Jiang Tian's victory over Dongyang, Singapore, Liu family, Song family, France and so on. Because this news was originally a secret in the dark world. Only people who reached a certain plane knew about it. And the information control departments of the major countries were strictly on guard, crazily deleting posts to cover up the truth. But she knew that Jiang Tian had defeated the 3 major families in Jinling City, and the Medicine King Group's market value had exceeded 100 billion. At that time she was so regretful that her intestines turned green. Later she heard from some big shots in Yanjin that the Medicine King Group had offended the Liu family and Song family, and the Medicine King Group had been withdrawn from the market and moved overseas. And now the European Union had announced that they would compensate the Medicine King Group for $100 billion and ban the products of the Medicine King Group. Now that the Medicine King Group had been withdrawn from the market and became a private company, many people did not know about its assets. In Fu Lanjuan's impression, it was still a pharmaceutical company with a market value of 100 billion renminbi. In this case, even 5 or 6 Medicine King Group would not be enough to compensate. Jiang Tian, you came to the Donald family to ask for help or financing, right? Fu Lanjun still had a smile on her face, but her heart was full of contempt and disdain. Now that you are a phoenix without feathers, you are even worse than a chicken and you still put on a stinky face and ignore me? Do you still think you are the same old man? In her mind, the Medicine King Group had failed completely. Although Jiang Tian knew some basic Dharma spells, he was no match for the powerful figures in Europe. You know about the Donald family? Jiang Tian was taken aback, so he turned around and asked. The Donald family is the leader of the Italian mafia. Fu Lanjun raised her chin and said proudly. They have hundreds of thousands of disciples and are as powerful as the Hong sect, the Big Circle and the Number Gang. In Europe, Mr. Donald is someone who can talk to the heads of state on an equal footing. He can even talk to the President of the European Union, Young. Jiang Tian's face remained impassive. Seeing Jiang Tian's deadpan face, Fu Lanjun felt even more hatred, disdain and anger. She said arrogantly, I am lucky. I'm very lucky. I'm now Donald's second son, John's girlfriend. I can say a few words to him. If you bow and apologize now, I'll introduce you and put in a few good words for you. Then she looked at Jiang Tian with a half-smile as if she was waiting for Jiang Tian to bow to her. He hated Jiang Tian to the core. She would never forget how she and her father, Fu Leiming, were forced to kneel and kowtow to Jiang Tian in front of everyone at the Tang family's apprenticeship ceremony and were kicked out of the Tang family. After that, she seemed to have gained a lot of motivation. She worked hard to climb up the social ladder and get to know more powerful people. In the end, she was able to climb up the social ladder of the Donald family. Now she thought that after marrying into a rich family, she could finally suppress Jiang Tian. How could she not ruthlessly take revenge for what happened back then? Bow to you and apologize? Who do you think you are? Jiang Tian shook his head with a disdainful smile. I don't deserve your respect. I am the future daughter-in-law of the Donald family. Isn't that enough? Fu Lanjun was stunned and didn't bother to explain. I am about to destroy the Donald family. Later I will kill you too. Jiang Tian walked leisurely to a cafe on the side of the street. He had just scanned the area with his divine sense and found that several family members were still on their way back. In any case, there was absolutely no problem in killing these people who did not even have the strength to truss a chicken. Jiang Tian did not mind waiting patiently. What did you say? Do you know what the Donald family means? Do you know how much money they have and how much power they have? Fu Longjuan's beautiful eyes widened as she stared at Jiang Tian's back. She couldn't believe it and shouted. You are ignorant and fearless. Do you think this is the East Sea, the Wuxia, where you can behave atrociously? How dare you threaten me? I am already the daughter-in-law of the Donald family. Just wait for your death. I will ask them to come out and kill you later. However, Jiang Tian ignored her and entered the cafe. He ordered some coffee and a simple meal and slowly enjoyed it. He's crazy. He must be crazy. His mental illness is acting up again. The woman's father, Fu Laming, came out of a black Mercedes-Benz and shook his head disdainfully. How dare he offend the Donald family, the leader of the mafia? If he is not crazy, then what is? Yes. Fu Longjun didn't want to argue with a nobody like Jiang Tian. She even said with a little sympathy. The Medicine King group is finished now. He must have been stimulated and went crazy again. His brain is not very good in the first place. Well, let's go. Fu Laming's father touched a sandalwood box in his hand and a trace of nervousness flashed across his face. Alas, our status is too low. Mr. Donald has always looked down on us. Now he just wants to let his son be the third wife. He is very picky. You must perform well later. While talking, the father and daughter walked into the manor of the Donald family after many checks by the guards. Half an hour later, Jiang Tian scanned with his divine sense and found that several core members of the Donald family had also returned home. He also finished the simple meal and calmly wiped his mouth with a tissue. Almost everyone is here. It's time to exterminate the family. Jiang Tian left 100 suo yuan for the meal and tip, walked out of the cafe and leisurely walked towards the manor. Chapter 792. For the past few days, the head of the Italian mafia, Mr. Donald, had been feeling uneasy. The Covenant of Darkness had arrived at Sidoni's North Bay for 2 days, but there had been no news. At this time he regretted his decision. It was too risky. If the Covenant of Darkness failed, if Kang Taichu did not die, then the Tang family and the entire mafia would face a disaster. However, Niaming promise was too tempting for him to refuse. After destroying Tianqing School, the Covenant of Darkness would help the mafia kill the Yamaguchi group and take over the Japanese and American markets. If they succeeded, then the mafia would dominate the world, achieving great achievements that would last for thousands of years and create history. At this time, facing Fu Longjun and Li Tianlon, Donald said a few perfunctory words, then asked them to sit down and ignored them. He was not even interested in looking at the pair of Yuan dynasty blue and white porcelain vases that they had given him. He had to deal with some urgent matters in case of an accident. Around him, dozens of men in black stood in great numbers, their waists bulging with hard weapons. However, Donald knew that it was impossible for these small-caliber firearms to kill the masters of Tianqing School. They were like fire sticks. Number 3. Go and contact the major munitions factories in the United States and buy some portable laser weapons. Number 2. Contact the Blackwater Company and the other top 3 mercenary organizations in the world and choose some capable people to strengthen our security and defense. You go to London and contact those black magicians and alchemists. I once sponsored them with millions of euros. Now it's time for them to return the favor. You go to the Italian police headquarters. I want them to be stationed in the family and protect us 24/7. You go to Sidonia and ask for information. If the situation is unfavorable, immediately pay a visit to Madame Zhao Xueqing to express our friendly attitude and donate 10 billion euros to their country. Donald's face was solemn and his eyes flashed coldly. He gave 7 or 8 orders in a row before his heart gradually calmed down. Mr. Donald, you're very smart. You're betting on both sides. But isn't it a little too late to bet on Sidonia now? At this time, a tall and imposing figure walked in unhurriedly with his hands behind his back and sneered. Jiang Tian, you really dare to come in? Fu Longjun was shocked, and then she screamed like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Mr. Donald, he was the one who was disrespectful to you and threatened to kill you. What a joke. The father and daughter of the Fu family had wanted to complain, but halfway through Mr. Donald ignored them and started to deal with his work. Kang Taichu, you didn't die. Donald knew Jiang Tian. After all, at his level, if he still couldn't find any information about Kang Taichu, then he would be too useless. What? Do you really want me to die? Jiang Tian said with a smile. Mr. Kong Teichu, I was confused. I was fooled by the Covenant of Darkness and Yemingyuan. Donald was so frightened that his body trembled. He knelt on the ground and said with a trembling voice, "Please be magnanimous and spare my life. I am willing to give you all of the Donald family's assets." Donald's sons, some were lawyers, some were accountants, some were strategists, and some were commanders. They were all scared out of their wits and knelt on the ground one after another. Fu Lanjun was dumbfounded when she saw her boyfriend John, also kneeling. He couldn't believe it. Donald knelt in front of Jiang Tian? This was the leader of the mafia, the famous Mr. Donald. Why did her boyfriend and his family have to kneel in front of Jiang Tian? In her opinion, even if Jiang Tian had some power, Donald was a tycoon in a developed country. How could Jiang Tian compare to him? "John, why did you kneel in front of him?" Fu Lanjun yelled. "He can't do it anymore. The Medicine King group has been banned by the European Union and they are demanding huge compensation. He's trash now." She couldn't accept it. She couldn't accept it. She had climbed the social ladder for so long and slept with so many people. She had endured endless humiliation and suffering before she finally entered the rich. But she was suppressed by Jiang Tian again. That was impossible. There must be a mistake. Donald's family didn't understand the situation and misunderstood something. "Mr. Donald, get up. You must have made a mistake." Fu Laming also stood up and said mockingly, "He is crazy. His brain is not very good to begin with." "Shut up." John was scared out of his wits after hearing their words. He jumped up and slapped Fu Lanjun in the face. Fu Lanjun staggered and fell to the ground. Her face was swollen and blood flowed out of her mouth. Her teeth flew and her head was buzzing. "You hit me? Why did you hit me?" She covered her face with tears in her eyes. She couldn't believe it. "Hit you? I want to kill you. How dare you disrespect Master Kong?" John roared angrily. He pulled out a pistol from his underling and shouted, "Kneel down. Kneel down to Grandmaster Jiang." Rumor had it that Kong Teichu had been trapped by the Covenant of Darkness. But he was still alive and had come to find him. He had defeated the Covenant of Darkness and had begun to eliminate his henchmen. This crazy woman dared to disrespect Kong Teichu and call him crazy. "Isn't she pushing me into the fire pit? Who is Kong Teichu?" That was a ferocious existence that could easily wipe out entire clans and destroy cities and countries. Even France had been defeated by him. No matter how powerful the Donalds family and the Italian mafia were, could they compare with the hundreds of thousands of modern French soldiers? It would be a piece of cake for him to kill Donald and destroy the Covenant of Darkness. It was over. At this moment, John really wanted to cry but had no tears. It was really over. It was completely over. "Didn't you say that you really loved me? Although you wouldn't give me a title, you would protect me for the rest of my life?" Fu Lanjun couldn't believe it. She got up, waved her hands and shouted hysterically. "In Wuxia, this trash man forced me to kneel down. Why didn't you avenge me? You even hit me for him. Your family is a mafia family. Where's your prestige? Where's your domineering aura?" Fu Lanjuan's understanding of the world had always been limited to experience and superficial appearances. She didn't know what a mafia family meant, let alone what the name Kong Teichu meant. She didn't realize that John really wanted to kill her. The gun in her hand wasn't to scare children. The mafia is nothing compared to Master Kong. I'm afraid that even the president of the European Union would have to kneel down when he sees him. John was furious. He didn't want to waste time talking nonsense. He shot Fu Lanjuan's snow-white thigh. Bang! Blood spurted out. The blood flowing down Fu Lanjuan's snow-white thigh was like a cold plum blossom blooming. It was very beautiful. Ow ow. Fu Lanjun was in so much pain that she screamed like a pig being slaughtered. She hugged her thigh and rolled on the ground, leaving a trail of scarlet blood on the ground. At this moment she still couldn't believe that John shot her because of Jiang Tian. All of this was like a nightmare. "How dare you disrespect Master Kong? Today I will kill you to quench Master Kang's thunderous anger." John's expression was cold and his eyes were cold. "John, Mr. Donald, Jiang Tian, please spare my life." This time Fu Lanjun was really scared. She endured the pain and knelt down. She wailed, trembled and begged. "Master Kong, after all, we're all descendants of the Yan Huang dynasty. Blood is thicker than water. Help me say something. Seeing that the gun was fired, Fu Leiming was scared out of his wits. He broke out in a cold sweat and trembled non-stop. He also knelt down. You want me to bow and apologize to you outside the door? Do you still think you have the right to do so? Jiang Tian said calmly. I didn't. Fu Longjuan's eyes were like rotten peaches. Her beautiful face was like a pear blossom in the rain. Her jade-white hands were placed in front of her chest, shaking rapidly. How dare you ask Master Kong to bow and apologize to you? You're asking for death. John's face hardened as he shot her in the other leg. Donald, who was kneeling on the ground, saw this and nodded silently. John was smart and quick to the point. Killing a woman to show respect to Master Kong was worth it. Hopefully Master Kang's anger would be quenched. John, I know I was wrong. Jiang Tian, let me go this time. I won't do it again. Fu Longjun was like a bitch that had been beaten several times. She screamed and rolled on the ground. The wounds on her legs were bleeding profusely. She was so scared that she peed her pants. Trash woman, you dog. How dare you provoke Master Kong Teichu? Go to hell. This time, John raised the gun and aimed at Fu Longjuan's head. Jiang Tian, I know I was wrong. Help me say something. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. Seeing this, Fu Longjun was scared out of her wits. She moved her knees and crawled toward Jiang Tian like a stray dog. He kept kowtowing and crying. Fu Leiming's face was as white as a sheet. He broke out in cold sweat and trembled. He could not say a word. At this moment he regretted it very much. Even if Medicine King Group was really going to collapse, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. How could Jiang Tian allow himself to be humiliated? What was even more unexpected was that he could suppress the Donald family. From what John said, even the President of the European Union was afraid of him. What kind of person could he be? What a terrifying power. How could he be so blind to provoke him? At this time it was too late to say anything. Calling the police was useless. The Italian police did not dare to offend the Donald family. Didn't you want to help me? You can talk to them, right? Aren't you the future daughter-in-law of the Donald family? Why are you begging me? Jiang Tian smiled indifferently. Although he was too lazy to kill an easy girl like Fu Longjun, he had no sympathy and would not stop others from killing her. There were so many good young men in Wuxia. Why did you have to find a triad? You even shamelessly gave gifts and begged to be his mistress. You are so proud of it. You are not ashamed of it but proud of it. Women in Wuxia were disgraced by this kind of woman. She was dead. Chapter 793. Jiang Tian, I know I was wrong. Fu Longjun begged with tears and snot running down her face. Give me one more chance. I won't dare to offend you again. As long as you speak I can live. Her hair was messy, her face was covered in dirt and she stank. She was more miserable than a beggar on the street. She didn't look like a socialite at all. If she stood on the street someone would definitely throw a few coins at her. Under the intense pain and fear, Fu Longjun felt like her brain was about to snap. Her body was not under the control of her brain and nerves. Her feces and urine flowed out uncontrollably from between her legs. In your eyes I'm just a crazy idiot. Since when did my words matter? Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and emotionless. Bang! A piece of skull flew out in a mix of brain matter and blood. Fu Longjun fell to the ground on her back. John had shot her in the head. That pair of clear eyes were still wide open, still filled with deep fear and unwillingness. It was as if she couldn't believe that she would die in such a miserable way in a foreign country. Her dream of being rich was shattered. Fu Leiming got up and ran outside amidst the screams. But John would not let him escape. He fired a few shots and turned him into a sieve. He fell to the ground dead. Immortal Jiang, the Donald family is willing to serve Master Kong for life. We are loyal and will obey your orders. Donald was kowtowing like a chick pecking at rice. He had a flattering smile on his face. Master Kong, you already control the big circle Yamaguchi-gumi, and the mafia with hundreds of thousands of members. It means that the entire world is yours. Of course, in the eyes of a real god like you, Master Kong, the societies are trash and can't be shown in public. But sometimes the societies are also useful. The leader of the mafia, whose name shook the world, no longer had his usual arrogance and majesty. Instead he was full of begging and fawning. If there was a tail on his butt he could probably wag it. He lowered his voice and guided patiently. He was very provocative. Just like when you suppressed the Rothschild family and Xianxia, didn't Japan's Yamaguchi-gumi and America's Big Circle play a big role? Jiang Tian looked at him with a faint smile. At this time, facing the threat of life and death, he could still be so calm and say such words. As expected of an ambitious and ruthless character, it was no wonder that he could control one of the largest societies in the world. What you said makes sense. If I kill your whole family, it may be difficult to control the mafia. Jiang Tian said slowly. That's true. The mafia is highly organized and extremely loyal. It's all centered around the family. Donald's face lit up. He had finally escaped with his life. However, the next moment Jiang Tian flicked his sleeves and stood with his hands behind his back. But if I don't kill a few people as punishment, how will the world know that I, Kong Teichu, cannot be provoked? How about this, you pick out a direct descendant and kill him for me. Consider this as an explanation for me. As soon as he said this, Donald's sons all turned as pale as paper and became anxious. Donald's expression was calm. He had hunted countless women in his life. Other than the 8 sons in the family, he also had many illegitimate children. In total, there were more than 30 of them. Losing 1 or 2 was not a big loss. Donald's eyes flashed coldly as he glanced at his 8 sons. The 8 sons' faces changed drastically. Their eyes were evasive and pitiful. Their bodies trembled and they could not even stand properly. John. Suddenly he raised his hand and pointed at John, his face cold. John's face changed drastically. He threw away his gun and knelt on the ground. Tears welled up in his eyes as he shouted. Dad, why do you want to kill me? All these years, the most dangerous missions in the family have been carried out by me. I am loyal to the family. Don't you see? Didn't you say that you wanted to train me and let me inherit the throne of the party leader? Why are you now? You are all my sons. I can't bear to let you all die. Donald's white hair trembled slightly. He sighed as if he was in a difficult and sad situation. But for the family, I have to make this difficult decision. You also know that Master Kong is not someone our family can afford to offend. However, Jiang Tian discovered that a hint of coldness flashed through his eyes. Just as I expected. This is interesting. Jiang Tian's divine perception swept across the few of them. A mocking smile appeared on his lips as he looked on coldly. John, don't worry. We will give you a proper burial. We will never forget the sacrifice you made for the family. Although the other 7 sons were comforting John, they actually heaved a long sigh of relief in their hearts. This was human nature. Even if they were blood brothers in a moment of life and death, it would be best for them to die instead of themselves. John, this is Father's decision. You have to follow it strictly. You also know that you can't run away. Someone was afraid that John would resist and even threatened him directly. He took out his gun and loaded it. John's body trembled violently. His eyes swept across his father and his brothers, and his expression changed rapidly. There was fear, anger, hatred, unwillingness, and confusion. But in the end, his gaze gradually became resolute. He took a deep breath and stood up. All right, for the family, I'm willing to die. Immortal Jiang, please do it. A fearless expression appeared on his face. He stepped forward and said, But Master Kong, please keep your promise. All right. Jiang Tian nodded. John closed his eyes. A trace of despair appeared on his face. The entire hall was silent. The solemn atmosphere was suffocating. Chi. After what seemed like an instant, but also like 10,000 years, an ear-piercing whistle suddenly sounded. 9 flying swords broke through the air and circled around the hall like streaks of green rainbow. Finally, they all flew out of the hall together. Donald grunted. His expression changed drastically as if he was greatly surprised. He knelt there motionlessly. Next to him, a female paranormal who was guarding the courtyard screamed loudly. Many guards saw it. Donald, his 7 sons other than John, and a few other strategists all had blood spurting out of their necks. They fell to the ground, dead in the blink of an eye, and lay there motionless. Outside the courtyard, a series of shrill screams sounded. It was short and hurried. Apparently they had died in an instant. In fact, such screams could be heard from dozens of kilometers away and even 200 kilometers away. In less than a minute. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 9 flying swords all flew back. Several corpses were hanging on them like candied haws. There were dozens of corpses in total. After hovering for a while, the flying swords all went into the sky-devouring demonic gourd at Zhang Tian's waist. In the hall, in the manor, there were bloodstains everywhere. Except for John, the entire Donald family had been wiped out. Only John was still standing there alone, looking at Zhang Tian in disbelief. Immortal Zhang, why is this? Zhang Tian glanced at John and said with his divine sense, do a thorough check. Do a thorough check. You can also do a simple genetic comparison. You're not Donald's biological son. Your biological father is someone else. No wonder I always carry out those assassination missions. Father said it was to train me. John stood there with a pale face. His heart had stopped and he felt like he was about to suffocate. Everything that had happened today had given him too much of a shock, and his heart was unable to bear it. But at least on the surface, you are Donald's biological son. Zhang Tian put the corpses in the hall into the sky-devouring demonic gourd, stepped in the pool of blood and said with his divine sense, now all the descendants of the Donald family have been killed. From now on the Donald family and the mafia will be yours. John immediately reacted. He bent his knees and knelt before Zhang Tian. His face was filled with gratitude. John will never forget Immortal Zhang's great kindness and benevolence. From now on the mafia will follow Master Kang's orders. From now on the mafia will follow Master Kang's orders. The others also knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Zhang Tian like believers seeing a god. Their voices were like rolling thunder. I have a friend named Zhang Qianlei who seems to have disappeared somewhere in Europe. It should be related to the blood clan. Help me investigate. Someone will contact you later. Zhang Tian stepped into the air and disappeared into the sky. At that time, Blood Ancestor Cain was fleeing at top speed. Just as he was about to rush out of the barrier, Zhang Tian acted too hastily and directly killed him. But Zhang Tian still did not know where Zhang Qianlei was. As a result, the entire Sidoni Intelligence Department, Big Circle and Yamaguchi-gumi were now under orders to search. In fact, Zhang Tian did not kill John because he was interested in the mafia's power was only a small part of the reason. It was more because he needed to use the mafia's power to find Zhang Qianlei's whereabouts. After all, the mafia was the largest society in Europe with hundreds of thousands of members. It was a bit faster than any intelligence agency. After Zhang Tian left for a long time, John dared to stand up and look at the crowd with a dignified gaze. Everything that happened today will rot in your stomachs. Otherwise you will be killed without mercy. France, Paris, the city of romance. It had been a long time since Zhang Tian defeated Paris. Everything here was recovering. The broken Arc de Triomphe, the Élysée Palace, the Eiffel Tower. They were either rebuilt or repaired. People seemed to have forgotten their pain. They forgot that not long ago, there was a shocking battle that caused them to lose their rights and humiliate their country. In a presidential suite in a luxurious hotel. Why isn't Sophie here yet? James looked at the Rolex Greenwater Ghost watch on his wrist and anxiously waited for his sister's arrival. The Tantorn family, which James belonged to, was originally a large family in France second only to the Rothschild family. Its industries included gold, jewelry, finance, military, wine, hotels, shipping, nuclear power and other industries. Its assets were worth 5 billion euros. Even the famous Bordeaux winery belonged to their family. After the fall of the Rothschild family and President Sanchi, the Tantorn family had risen to become the first family in France. The rise of the Tantorn family was also due to their cooperation with the California Consortium to acquire the Luo family's industry. As the first heir of the Tantorn family, James was very satisfied with his life. He had inexhaustible wealth, the right to speak directly with the French president, a beautiful wife and concubines and so on. In particular, he was very proud of his latest venture capital. He donated 30 million euros as the capital for the Covenant of Darkness to attack Sidoni and destroy Tianqing School. Chapter 794. And the Covenant of Darkness also promised that once they took down Sidoni, the military industry there would belong to the Tantorn family. It was said that Sidoni had developed many advanced weapons that could surpass the 5 major countries in the world. There are 3 best ways to make money in the world. The first is war, the second is war, and the third is still war. This was the dogma of the Tantorn family, and James also regarded it as a standard. But now that peace and development had become the theme of the world, controlling war was not so easy. Today his youngest sister, Sophie, came back from the Art Institute of the University of Paris and met with him. Thinking of this charming little sister of his lower abdomen began to heat up. He and Sophie had a secret that no one knew. The two of them had had sex when they were young. Although James knew that his little sister was naturally flirtatious, had many partners and even had an ambiguous relationship with many uncles in the family, he didn't care at all. When he thought of his little sister's delicate skin and exquisite curves, he couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. In his excitement he took a blue pill and waited anxiously. A few minutes later the door opened. A delicate body wearing designer clothes and exuding a seductive fragrance quickly jumped into his arms. At this time, Zhou Xian had already started a massacre in the Tantorn Manor in the southern suburbs of Paris. He killed more than a dozen family members and sacrificed the bodies into the sky-devouring magic gourd. At this time, there were already more than 500 bodies floating in his sky-devouring magic gourd. In France he had killed the most people. He had killed more than 300 people. Perhaps Zhou Xian destroyed Paris back then, so many French nobles and plutocrats hated him. These people were all secular families and naturally they didn't have the strength to challenge Zhou Xian. They only had money. So, they hid behind and secretly supported Nie Mingyuan and the Covenant of Darkness. They thought that this was a very safe and cost-effective transaction. If the Covenant of Darkness won they would get excessive profits. But if they lost they would only lose 1 or 200 million euros or even tens of millions. But they didn't know. All of this couldn't escape the eyes of Sidoni's Special Intelligence Agency, and the investigation of Hera and the others. It had to be said that James and Sophie were much luckier than the other Tantorn family members. At least they still enjoyed the pleasure of the bed before they died. After a series of rapid growls, James got up from Sophie and sensed something was wrong. He turned around and saw a Wuxia youth with a gloomy temperament looking at him with a mocking expression. Just as he was about to speak the man's finger moved, and that was the last thing he saw in this world. As for Sophie, when she opened her beautiful eyes, what she saw was James' chest being blasted apart by a bolt of lightning. She was startled and immediately screamed. However, before the scream could escape her throat, her head had already fallen to the ground. They were destined to die because they had offended Kong Techu. After putting the two corpses into the sky-devouring demonic gourd, Zhou Xian stepped into the air and disappeared from the room, heading for the next stop. That night, August 1, 2011, in the wee hours of the morning, 23 people from the Carlson family were killed at the Green Vines Club in Germany. After that, Zhou Xian left after killing a total of 120 people from 3 wealthy families in Germany. August 2 in the morning in the Czech Republic, Zhou Xian killed 68 people at Sir Median's house after breakfast. August 3 in Buckingham Palace in England, Zhou Xian beheaded Prince Charles with a sword. 33 royal descendants died an unnatural death. Zhou Xian swept across the world this time. Could be said that he was unstoppable. He killed all those who stood in his way. Even the members of the royal family were not spared or escaped. Because he had offended Kong Techu. In just a few days, Zhou Xian went around Europe and killed more than 1,200 people. Everyone in the upper class was terrified and in danger. However, this massacre was far from over. There were also a few big families in America and Canada. This was especially true for the US military, which secretly supported Blue Storm. That was the highlight. In the end, the news of Kong Techu's strong return, the fall of the Zhenyu Demon King, and the destruction of the Covenant of Darkness began to spread. The world's underground world was dead silent. No one dared to believe this news. Whether it was the many assassin organizations, mercenary groups, or the many dark families, societies, and organizations, no one dared to say a word. Because many people did not believe this news at all. Kong Techu, who had been trapped for 4 to 5 months by the day imprisonment array, did not die and had become even stronger. The Covenant of Darkness, which had once slaughtered thousands of miles, had 1,000 years of foundation and could wrestle with the Holy See, had fallen just like that. The ultimate blood breed, Cain, and the 6 blood ancestors, the Wolf King of the Grassland, Gargal, and the invincible Zhenyu Demon King, were so easily killed by Kong Techu. The Covenant of Darkness had been hidden in this world for 60 years. However, their glory did not diminish. In the Middle Ages, the blood ancestors and the wolf ancestors swept across the world. They controlled the politics of many countries and the choice of the royal family. Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, India. The dark overlords in these countries had to obey their orders. In the Middle Ages, where there were many overlords and immortal state warriors, many overlords were under the control of the Covenant of Darkness. But now they had been wiped out by Kong Techu. This sounded like the biggest joke in the world. It was simply too inconceivable. This is shocking. How can Kong Techu be so powerful? An overlord with the ID Blade Emperor commented on the dark web. Everyone knew this ID. He was the leader of one of the top 10 mercenaries in the world, the Wolves of the World. It was not as powerful as the Black Water of the United States and the Black Skull of France, but it was still very influential. The ultimate blood ancestor, Cain, is equivalent to an Earth-level deity. Nie Mingyuan is even more powerful than an Earth-level deity. The blood ancestors and the wolf ancestors are all mortal deities. This means that Kong Techu alone killed 7 or 8 mortal deities and 2 Earth-level deities. This is incredible. A powerhouse called Demon Hunter Pulsatilla cried out in surprise, cheering for Jiang Tian's valiant battle results. Kong Techu upheld justice and saved the world. He is a hero, an invincible hero. Legend had it that Demon Hunter Pulsatilla was the disciple of the top demon hunter in the West, Van Helsing. He had reached the transcendent Grandmaster level at the age of 30. After Nie Mingyuan rose to power, in order to unite the blood breeds, he slaughtered the demon hunters all over the world until their blood flowed like a river. Heads rolled and hundreds of people died. After Jiang Tian defeated the Covenant of Darkness, Pulsatilla cheered for Kong Techu and had become Jiang Tian's loyal fan. In the end, because of the great impact of this battle, more and more overlords were exposed. The overlords who were watching the battle were shocked. They were all overlords who were as powerful as immortal state warriors. They had never thought that they would come together to discuss this matter. Hera, the Queen of Heaven, also came out. She seems to have been lurking. Someone exclaimed on the forum. Hera, the Queen of Heaven of the Pantheon, appeared. In the dark world there were many forces and factions. However, they were generally divided into independent organizations and organizations that were close to the government. There was a clear distinction between them and organizations that did not interact with each other. The Pantheon used to be an organization of overlords funded and supported by the European Union, which was why the European Union relied on it. The other experts, on the other hand, had broken the law with their martial prowess. Many of them had even been suppressed by the palace of the gods before, so there was more or less some history between them. Hera smiled and said, "This is earth-shattering. I'm also here to join in the fun." After the Covenant of Darkness was completely destroyed, more than half of the dark overlords around the world died. The Holy See and Hongmeng went into hiding. I'm afraid the Tianqing school will dominate the dark world today. Upon hearing her words, many of the dark experts felt a pang in their hearts. I heard that Senior Hera had been to the battlefield. How powerful do you think Kong Techu is? The King of the Blade asked. How powerful is Kong Techu? He didn't die from the one-day imprisonment array. Is he a sky immortal or even beyond that? Pulsatilla made such a bold guess. He was a demon hunter and had a good relationship with Hera. Beyond the sky immortal holy master. Isn't that a true god? That's impossible. Who has seen a god? It's impossible for it to exist. Many people exclaimed. Kong Techu didn't allow any videos to be leaked. However, at that time the Zhenyu Demon King and Cain did show the strength of an Earth Immortal Holy King, but they were still killed by Kong Techu. Hera introduced. Isn't that the strength of a Sky Immortal Holy Master? When this was said, the entire dark world was in an uproar. A Sky Immortal. This was a mythical figure in the East. For thousands of years, there had been no record of a Sky Immortal. In the West, ever since the death of St. Paul, the last Holy Master of the Holy See in the 3rd century AD, no one had reached the Sky Immortal level. If Jiang Tian became a Sky Immortal, he would be the most powerful person in the last 1,000 years. Even the superpowers with nuclear weapons would have to be cautious. After all, they had only killed an immortal state warrior in the past. However, a Sky Immortal was not something an immortal state warrior could compare with. It was still unknown whether nuclear weapons could kill a Sky Immortal. We don't know if Kong Techu is a sky immortal holy master or not, but we all agree that he has shown such a strong power. You know, the founder of the Hong sect, Situ Shao, had already become an earth immortal, but he still bowed down to Qin Fan before entering the sword vault. Then an overlord who was watching the battle in person exclaimed. Even as he said this, the dark web forum was silent. All the overlords were suffocated. There was no point in speculating about Jiang Tian's power. The key was his power. He was already powerful enough to defeat an earth immortal. How many people in the world could fight with him? He was invincible. Chapter 795. The news that Jiang Tian had swept across Europe and killed many families spread. Last time, Jiang Tian targeted the henchmen of Martel, the blood god of France. Although he killed a few families that supported him, there weren't many of them and he mainly killed the remaining members of the kindred. But this time Jiang Tian killed more than 1,000 people. It could be said that many European families that supported Nie Mingyuan and the Gathering of Darkness were wiped out. For a week, the entire upper-class society of the European Union couldn't sleep and eat well. But the entire European Union, the Joint Conference and the Coalition Army remained silent and didn't dare to say a word. At this time, the leaders of the major countries and forces around the world were terrified. There was no one who wasn't afraid of death. No matter how much power they had, Kong Techu could easily take their lives. That was the most terrifying thing. From that moment on. In this world, no matter how powerful and extraordinary the forces were, they wouldn't dare to challenge Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian suppressed the entire world by himself. In Buckingham Palace in England, Jiang Tian sat on a throne inlaid with gems and pearls and intricate carvings. Mr. Kong Techu, please stop. Don't kill anymore. The entire joint conference of the European Union is going to explode. Jung, the president of the European Union, lowered his head and begged. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper and he was terrified. At this time he really regretted it and wanted to slap himself a few times to vent his anger. Who would have thought that Master Kong was so powerful that he could survive after being trapped in the day prison array for a few months and his strength was a bit stronger than before? Who would have thought that the Covenant of Darkness would be defeated so thoroughly? They were completely wiped out and vanished into thin air. They had thought that the Tianqing School and the Gathering of Darkness would fight and the officials of the European Union would reap the benefits. Who would have thought that Jiang Tian would come to the European continent? Now the top 33 families in the European Union had been destroyed by Jiang Tian. One had to know that these families were not commoners. They had many enterprises under their names and were involved in many industries. They even controlled the economic lifeline of a country. Now that he was killed, the entire European Union was in chaos. Businesses closed down, workers lost their jobs, capital flowed out and the euro plummeted. There were demonstrations everywhere, and some organizations even declared revolution. This scene was very similar to what had happened in France not long ago. However, back then it was only France. Now the entire European Union was in trouble. Moreover, there were several heads of state that were not honest. Some heads of state asked Jung to step down, some announced a Brexit vote, and some directly asked for the dissolution of the European Union. What was even more frightening was that it was now the year 2011. Smartphones were everywhere and all kinds of information were spreading rapidly. Legends of the god Sidoni and other gods were constantly circulating, and the government's credibility was rapidly declining. Many chain reactions were triggered and the entire European Union was in turmoil. Jung knew that he might end up as miserable as Sanchi. Jung, you should be thanking me. Jiang Tian drank the best red wine from the Bordeaux winery, which was now under his name. He said with a hint of ridicule. Back then, the Covenant of Darkness ran rampant in Europe and committed murder repeatedly. Now I helped you kill the Covenant of Darkness and its henchmen. Shouldn't you thank me? How can you stop me? Especially those henchmen. They had enough of the peaceful days, right? They insisted on supporting the Covenant of Darkness. They are very confident. Now I will let them know the consequences of provoking me, Kong Techu. Jiang Tian's words had a hidden meaning. In fact, the first to support the Covenant of Darkness happened to be Jung and the European Union officials. They even wanted to mobilize the European Union coalition to wage war against Sidoni. However, because of the obstruction of some of the big families, the support plan was abandoned halfway. Master Kong, no more people can die. Jung had ulterior motives. How could he not understand? He wanted to cry but had no tears. He only felt that his face had been slapped swollen by Zhang Tian. I don't have any confidence at all now. How could I know that you are so powerful? You haven't died after a few hundred years in the one-day imprisonment array. Jung, do you think that they don't deserve to be killed? Zhang Tian's eyes suddenly became cold and fierce. A vast and surging pressure came crashing down like the Milky Way. Mr. Kong Taechu, they deserve to be killed, they deserve to be killed. As the president of the European Union, Jung's temperament was very strong after so many years of ups and downs. But how could he withstand Zhang Tian's monstrous pressure? His knees went soft and he knelt on the ground with a thud. Next to him, Hera saw that the president of the European Union, who had always been arrogant, was so humble in front of Zhang Tian. He didn't even have a trace of dignity. Hera couldn't help but feel pleased. After kneeling, Jung gave up on himself and even felt very comfortable. That's right, standing in front of Zhang Tian was truly unbearable, making one feel tormented. His face was full of flattery and he said humbly with a smile, "It's just that the ordinary people are innocent. No snowflake is innocent during an avalanche." Zhang Tian's fingers tapped on the golden armrest and said coldly, "What does your life have to do with me?" Master Kong, we have prepared a very sincere agreement. As long as you agree, we will sign it immediately. Jung said with a pleading face. Let me see it. Zhang Tian's eyes were indifferent. The European countries had long been familiar with unequal treaties such as ceding territory and paying reparations. In recent times, they had used their strong ships and cannons to invade China several times. Which time did they not sign a batch of unequal treaties? But this time it was unequal to them. Zhang Tian glanced at it. The health departments of the European Union purchased a large number of products from Medicine King Group. Many sanatoriums bought Medicine King Group's patented technology and built Immortal sanatoriums. The contract amount was in the trillions of euros. It could be said that Medicine King Group alone could support the entire Sidonie. In addition, Medicine King Group and Sidonie's products exported to the European Union would be exempted from some tariffs. Those who came to invest would also receive all kinds of preferential treatment. Interestingly, even the Chinese medicine of Wuxia, which was considered illegal by the European Union, could be exported to the European Union. Seeing this, Zhang Tian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. One should know that for decades the Chinese medicine staff of Wuxia had been working hard to open the door to the European Union and the United States, but the results were minimal. The health department of the European Union had very strict requirements for Chinese medicine. With dozens of laws such as the Registration of Traditional Plant Medicines Ordinance, it was almost impossible to export Chinese medicine to the European Union. But now the unintentional willow had grown. In order to please Zhang Tian, the European Union had opened the door to Chinese medicine, which they had previously regarded as superstition. That's it. Although Zhang Tian was quite satisfied, his eyes suddenly turned cold. He sneered and said, I, Sidonie, am the sixth most powerful country in the world. Since when do I need your money? I think we still need to kill those who supported the Covenant of Darkness. Let's start with you. Master Kong, don't kill me. Don't kill me. Jung was so scared that he almost wet himself. He kowtowed like a chicken pecking rice and cried, I still have an important secret. You will regret it if you kill me. What is it? Tell me. Zhang Tian said with a smile. Jung took out a gold key inlaid with diamonds and said with a flattering face, I used to be the head of the Austrian Defense Intelligence Department and received a piece of news. The Covenant of Darkness has a large treasure vault in the Swiss Alps. And this is the key. It was seized by the Austrians after they killed a powerful figure of the blood kindred in a battle. So long? Is it still there? Zhang Tian took the key and fiddled with it as he asked. The key looked like it was made of gold, but it was not ordinary gold. It was faintly purple. Zhang Tian could tell at a glance that this was the immortal purple gold, which could only be refined by self-cultivators who had reached the golden core level. It was a treasure in itself. Zhang Tian had read many books, but he had never found any record of a golden core cultivator on Earth. Zhang Tian was more inclined to believe that the divine purple gold was left on Earth by a powerful cultivator from outer space. After all, the treasured sword of the Immerse sword sect of Shu Mountain also came from outer space. Moreover, Zhang Tian also found that although the material was very good, the runes carved on it were not the runes and patterns of the self-cultivators, but some alchemy runes and patterns from the Middle Ages. It was obvious that they were made by the Earthlings. This also confirmed his speculation that the material came from outer space and was used by the Blood Kindred to carve a Dharma artifact to open the seal. It's still here. Ronggu said hurriedly. That's one of the nests of the Blood Kindred. Many of them are dormant there and ordinary armies don't dare to invade. Good. I'll leave your head with you for now. If you cause any trouble I'll take it away. Zhang Tian asked for the specific address, then waved his hand and flew away with Hera. Thank you, Master Kong, for sparing my life. 3 minutes after Zhang Tian left. Only then did Ronggu stand up with trembling legs, only to find that his back was already soaked in cold sweat and it was chilly. Zhang Tian was extremely fast now. He didn't even need a flying sword. In a few hours he had crossed half of the European continent and arrived at a mountain peak in the Alps. Hera, whose waist was held by Zhang Tian, was speechless. Master Kang's speed was terrifying. Without a Dharma artifact he was 3 or 4 times faster than the speed of sound. If she hadn't reached the immortal state she wouldn't have been able to withstand it. Interesting. This treasure vault used lead to prevent psychic energy from entering. Zhang Tian chuckled. When Zhang Tian was roaming Europe he had flown over this mountain peak and scanned it a few times with his divine sense. After all, experts and treasures were often hidden in the famous mountains and rivers since ancient times. Mount Blanc was one of the largest mountains in the Alps. Zhang Tian had no time to look at it, so of course he took a look at it. But he didn't find anything at that time. Only now did he realize that inside the mountain, the entire area around the treasury was completely covered by lead. The psychic energy and physical reflex detection of immortal-level experts were useless. But now that Zhang Tian was using his divine sense, how could it escape Zhang Tian's divine sense? Chapter 796. Zhang Tian jumped a few times and arrived in front of a cliff. He slashed across the sky and shattered the mountain within a few hundred meters. Screams were heard as flesh and blood splashed everywhere. The Count and Duke-level vampires stationed here were all killed with a single slash. After the mountain crumbled for a long time, a wide passageway appeared, extending 100 meters deep into the mountain. Zhang Tian and Jiang Chen flew in. Finally, a golden door that was over 10 meters tall appeared, blocking their path. There were giant braziers on both sides of the gate. Strange gems were piled up in the braziers, emitting a bright light. The golden gate alone weighed dozens of tons, which was equivalent to the gold reserves of some small countries in the Third World. The gathering of darkness had been extremely prosperous in history. There was a giant demon head engraved on the golden gate. The demon had a green face and fangs. It opened its bloody mouth and had 2 horns on its head. Its eyes were flashing with a terrifying red light. If ordinary people saw it, they would have been scared out of their wits. Zhang Tian dug out 2 large rubies from the ghost head's eyes and tossed them to Hera. He chuckled and said, "Don't worry." He chuckled and said, "Hera, Zeus has been dead for a long time. No one must have given you a gift. I'll give you 2 gems to make a necklace or ring." Hera knew that Zhang Tian was a very bored person when he wasn't fighting, so she wasn't angry. She threw the gems into her pocket and smiled. "If I wear such a large ruby on my hand, I'm afraid I'll be so tired that I'll get shoulder pain." While talking, Zhang Tian had already inserted the purple golden key into the demon's mouth. There was only a rumble. There was a loud noise. Waves of magical power rippled out from the evil demon's head until they covered the entire golden door. Then the golden gate seemed to be alive. It shrank into the walls on both sides and the treasury was finally revealed. Hera followed Zhang Tian into the treasury. Hera immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Her beautiful eyes widened, revealing an expression of shock and disbelief. The treasury was 100 meters wide and was surrounded by golden light and spirit chi. This was especially true for the dozen or so streaks of spiritual light that blossomed with multicolored splendor. The flowing lights and vibrant colors made them appear even more extraordinary. There are 10 quasi-spirit treasures. 3 spiritual treasures. Zhang Tian clicked his tongue in disbelief. Before Zhang Tian came here, Even though he knew that this was the 1,000-year treasure of the Dark Parliament, he didn't expect it to be so rich. In the battle at the North Bay of Sidoni, so many experts of the Dark World had come out in full force, and they must have used all their treasures. How many treasures could they have left? However, Zhang Tian forgot one thing. There were also some treasures that the experts of the Dark Parliament couldn't use. This is the sacred blood magic robe. Legend has it that it was stained with the holy blood left behind by Messiah when she was suffering, and it had been refined by many popes. It was once worn by a red-robed archbishop, and its defensive capabilities are astonishing. This is the bloodthirsty Wolf King's meteoric iron wolf claw. It should be a trophy from the battle between the Blood Clan and the werewolves. This is the golden puppet of the great golden wheel Dharma King, the reincarnated Buddha of the Tibetan Tantric sect. It once killed an evil divine realm expert. The more Hera looked, the more shocked she became. These were all legendary quasi-spirit treasures that had once shone in history. She didn't expect that they would be collected here by the Dark Parliament. As for the Dharma artifacts, gold, jewelry and jade, they were as vast as the sea, and Zhang Tian and Hera didn't care about them at all. What is this? It seems to be the divine bone scepter of the Austrian red-robed archbishop. I heard that it was given to the Holy See by the heavenly god, and it was used to kill many Duke kindred in the Middle Ages. Hera looked at a white bone scepter wrapped in gold and gems in shock and murmured. That piece of bone had a long history, but it was still emitting a soft and holy white light. Its Dharma power was very strong and it was incredible. The Dark Parliament is really good at plundering. Zhang Tian looked around. There were more than a dozen quasi-spirit treasures and spirit treasures, and there was a lot of energy fluctuation. Even with Hera's extraordinary knowledge, she only recognized 4 or 5 of them. What is this? Zhang Tian's pupils contracted, and he was immediately attracted by some orange-yellow translucent crystals. Zhang Tian walked over and scanned it with his immortal will, and he was overjoyed. It's explosive crystals. And there are so many of them. There are at least 500 kilograms. Zhang Tian's eyes were filled with joy. He had found some flame crystals in the treasury of blood god Barthel in France. When he used them to make the red flame fortune elixir and the foundation establishment elixir in the sword tomb, they worked well and were comparable to the 3 true fire. The explosive crystals contained powerful and violent energy, and they were even more powerful than the flame crystals. For example, if the flame crystals were like oil on earth, then the explosive crystals were like gunpowder. The explosive crystals were formed under very strict conditions, and they only existed on some planets with supergravity. Zhang Tian had never found them on Earth. Because of the violent energy they contained, these crystals were mostly used as fuel for large Dharma artifacts, and they could also be carved into Dharma artifacts and used as weapons. Zhang Tian thought of the Kuilian. Before leaving Sidoni, Zhang Tian checked the Kuilian system. Zhang Qinzhen was very talented in refining, and many of the memories in his mind had been restored. The Kuilian system he made was originally a small or medium-sized Dharma artifact, but because the hardness, melting point and toughness of most materials on Earth were too low, he had expanded the Kuilian system by 10 times. But the effect was not discounted. There was still a problem, and that was the problem of fuel. Now, some of the crystals they were using were relatively low-level crystals, and they could not achieve the desired effect in terms of range and explosion range. However, with the exploding crystal, the sunflower lotus system would be able to unleash its full destructive power. Zhang Tian recalled the many technical parameters of the Kuilian system in his mind. He was pleasantly surprised to find that it was highly compatible with the explosive crystals. He only needed to modify a few details of the settings, and the destructive power of the Kuilian system could be maximized. Thinking of this, Zhang Tian was overjoyed, and he put all the explosive crystals into the sky-devouring magic gourd without hesitation. In addition, Zhang Tian packed up all the Dharma artifacts, Dharma treasures, spiritual treasures, ancient books, gold, jade and so on, and put them into the sky-devouring magic gourd. These things were originally his, and Zhang Tian would not let others take advantage of them. Anyway, the space in his sky-devouring magic gourd was big enough to fit all of them. Just as Zhang Tian was about to leave after collecting the spoils of war, a ray of light flashed by. Suddenly, a holy light flashed at the gate and a black-robed priest suddenly appeared. He has reached the divine realm. Zhang Tian saw that the priest's eyes flashed slightly, and there was a hint of amazement. This man was only a low-level priest, but he had such a powerful cultivation which did not match his status at all. Before this, Zhang Tian had traveled across Europe, settling accounts with the major families, and his divine sense had scanned many churches and monasteries left behind by the Holy See. However, those people did have a certain level of dharma power. Even some bishops did not have such a powerful cultivation, and most of them were equivalent to the transcendent realm. But now, a black-robed priest who could be said to be in the divine realm had jumped out. The priest's gaze swept across the empty treasury and his brows furrowed deeply. Then his eyes fell on Zhang Tian and he showed a kind smile. He bowed and said, "Sir, where are the treasures here?" "I took them." Zhang Tian saw that the priest was polite, so he told him the truth. "He took them." The priest nodded and then said earnestly, "Sir, these are the treasures left behind by the Holy See. You are not qualified to take them. Please return them to the Holy See immediately. God will forgive your sin of greed." "Are you kidding?" Zhang Tian laughed. "This is the treasury of the Covenant of Darkness. How did it become yours?" "Sir, you know about the Covenant of Darkness. You are not an ordinary person." A trace of vigilance appeared on the priest's face, and then he smiled bitterly. "But these treasures were indeed taken by the Covenant of Darkness from the Holy See. So you should return them to the Holy See." Haha, there is an old saying in Wuxia, "Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor." Since the Covenant of Darkness took them, why don't you ask them? "Why are you asking me?" Zhang Tian snorted. The priest's eyes suddenly turned cold and his face was as gloomy as water. He said in a deep voice, "You are a child of God. You should be loyal and serve the Holy See." "Haha, I don't believe in God." Zhang Tian laughed out loud. He swung his sleeves, stood with his hands behind his back and said, "What if I don't give them to you?" The priest was shocked. He stretched out his right hand, put his 5 fingers together and pointed his middle finger to his forehead and shoulders. He said piously, "God, please forgive this person's sin." At this moment, Hera stared at the cross with special carvings on his chest. Her expression suddenly changed and she pulled Zhang Tian aside. "Master Kong, this priest should be from the Ezekiel Monastery in Spain." Hera's eyes were filled with fear. This monastery is one of the 9 monasteries under the Holy See. They claim to be the messengers and servants of God. They are powerful and cannot be offended. Why don't you just give them 1 or 2 treasures? "So what if I don't return them? Does he dare to snatch them? I'll slap him to death." Zhang Tian could not be bothered with him and he swaggered out the door. "Thief, how dare you steal the treasures of the Holy See? You are committing a crime and blaspheming God. Stop, you are not allowed to leave." The black-clothed priest's face suddenly became dignified and he began to shout loudly. His huge spiritual power gushed out, creating a monstrous majesty. If it was an ordinary person or a believer, they would definitely be frightened. But this spiritual power was not worth mentioning to Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian ignored him and his feet did not stop. "Arrogant and ignorant people, how dare you not listen to the orders of the messengers of God? Die for me." The black-clothed priest's eyes were cold and he suddenly attacked. He pulled out a sharp cross-light sword with both hands. The light sword was extremely hot and it slashed toward Zhang Tian's back. Holy Art Cross-Light Sword. This was the holy art of the Holy See and it was very powerful. The holy light was brilliant and the sword was sharp, comparable to the strength of Zeus and Hera. One sword could cut an armored car. "Old man, you are very bad, how dare you sneak attack?" Zhang Tian's face was cold and he did not even turn his head. His 7th metal true essence surged out like a storm, and the cross-light sword was shattered. The priest did not have the strength to resist at all. He suddenly spat out blood and flew more than 10 meters away and fell to the ground like a dead dog. He lay on the ground holding his chest and howling. He looked at Zhang Tian in disbelief and shouted angrily, You dare to resist the messengers of God. You can actually destroy the cross-light sword technique? You must be the devil." Chapter 797. Messengers of God are nothing. Even if your true God is here, I can still kill him. Jiang Tian slowly approached the black-robed priest, murderous intent flashing in his eyes. He never believed that the Holy See and the clergy were kind people. In history, in order to protect its authority and seize worldly wealth, the Church had launched 8 crusades, burning, killing, looting, and plunging the people into misery and suffering. In the Middle Ages, the Pope wrestled with the secular dynasties, fought for power, challenged the imperial power, launched several wars, and forcibly recruited soldiers. Their Inquisition suppressed and persecuted the secular world, brutally killing hundreds of thousands of heretics. It could be said that their hands were stained with blood. They had imprisoned Copernicus, who insisted on the heliocentric theory, and burned Bruno alive. Galileo was also imprisoned by the Inquisition for 9 years until he died of illness. In modern times, the missionaries were the vanguard of the colonists' invasion of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. They collected intelligence, promoted enslavement education, and found and trained agents for the colonists. Jiang Tian would not be polite to them. But at this moment, in the sharp sound of whooshing, many powerhouses of the Holy See arrived around the treasure vault on holy light. Some of them were guards of the Holy See wearing ancient armor, some of them were powerful holy knights, some of them were cruel and merciless inquisitors, and some of them were saint spellmasters who were comparable to Huasha's spellcasters. There were actually several hundred of those guards. Almost all of them were inner force cultivators, and half of them were masters. They were everywhere on the mountain, carrying all kinds of tools and weapons. It seemed that they wanted to take away the treasures. More than a dozen of them came to the cave, and a few of them were immortal state. The leader was a red-robed bishop, and he was a real saint. Hera was shocked when she saw this. It was an eye-opener. There had been no record of a saint in the West for hundreds of years. But in fact, one had appeared in front of her. Haha, it seems that all the major forces are the same. Their real trump cards are unknown and kept secret. Jiang Tian wasn't surprised. It was all within reason. Yi Zhantian, who was only half a step away from the immortal state, was the face of Huaxia's martial arts. But in fact there were more powerful semi-hidden sects such as Hongmeng, where there were at least dozens of immortal state cultivators and many human immortals. It was just like Russia. Alexander the Moon Wolf King was the most powerful on the surface. But in fact the Wolf Ancestor and the Caucasus Shaman King had both surpassed the immortal state. It was just like how the CIA appeared to be the most powerful in the United States, but behind them was Blue Storm and the even more mysterious Cosmic Shield. Speaking of which, only a small country like Japan had the weakest foundation, yet it was arrogant and conceited. Only Miyamoto Genichi, who was half a step away from the divine realm, survived, but he was killed by his saber. After that, no other experts appeared. How dare you be disrespectful to our priests? You've insulted the messengers of God, which means you've offended God. Why aren't you kneeling and begging for mercy? Do you want to die? Where's my baby? Did you steal it, thief? Hurry up and hand it over. Otherwise, the Inquisitor will burn you at the stake. At this moment, seeing that the black-clothed priest was beaten to the point of vomiting blood and falling to the ground, the clergy, guards, and paladins all pointed at Jiang Tian and roared angrily, surrounding him with weapons in hand. Do you still dare to kill me? The cloister and even the Holy See will not rest until you die. Furthermore, our main force has already arrived. Seeing that strong reinforcements had arrived, the priest in black immediately straightened his neck and said arrogantly, "Sinner, kneel and surrender, or we will execute you by hanging and send your soul to hell." He was arrogant and he revealed a smug smile. He actually recklessly threatened Jiang Tian. Do you think they can save you? Do you think I won't dare to kill you now that they're here? Jiang Tian coldly looked at the black-clothed priest as a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. What did you say? The priest in black couldn't believe it. His face suddenly turned pale, but it was too late. Smack. Jiang Tian raised his hand and smashed the priest in black directly into a meat paste, sinking into the ground. What? You dare to kill a member of the Holy See? Villain. Kill him. Seeing this, many powerhouses of the Holy See and the cloister were shocked and furious. They almost went crazy and pulled out their weapons ready to attack Jiang Tian. The Holy See's foundation was too deep, and its influence in history was too great. Rising in 392 AD, it had a long history of more than 1,000 years. In the dazzling Middle Ages, when immortal state cultivators were everywhere, They could dominate the entire European continent and were more glorious than the royal families of the big countries. Even the powerhouses of Russia and Central Asia had to listen to their orders. Although the Holy See's influence weakened with the rise of the big capitalist countries, it was still the undisputed number one force in the world. Its influence was comparable to that of the big countries of the world. But now Zhang Tian had killed a priest of one of the 9 major cloisters in front of a red-robed bishop. This was a slap to the Holy See's face and they couldn't accept it. A divine paladin leaped and swung his huge sword at Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian flicked his finger. Smack. The paladin's head exploded and his glistening flesh fell to the ground. He died instantly. Very well. Does the Holy See want to fight with me? Then I don't mind killing every last one of you. Zhang Tian coldly shouted. His dignified gaze swept over the crowd as he spoke arrogantly. Archbishop Shix, this is the Honorable Kong Techu. Don't do anything. Seeing this, Hera was shocked. She knew that Zhang Tian was going to kill someone. She hurriedly stopped the Holy See's powerhouses. These are the spoils of war that Kong Techu obtained after defeating the Covenant of Darkness. They should belong to him. Kong Techu didn't want to provoke the Holy See. After all, the Hall of the Gods was still supported by the Holy See. She also had some friendship with the Holy See and didn't want to see them die. What? He's Kong Techu. The red-robed bishop's expression changed and he was shocked and furious. He's Kong Techu. No wonder he could kill an immortal with a flick of his finger. He's so powerful. At that moment the powerhouses of many families were shocked. Their eyes were filled with fear as they took a few steps back. Among the crowd only Shix remained calm. His eyes were filled with anger as he said with a cold expression. Mr. Kong Techu, I know you. It's said that you're a true immortal of the East. But why did you kill a clergyman of the Holy See? He killed me so I killed him. It's that simple. Do you think I should just wait for him to kill me and not fight back? Zhang Tian put his hands behind his back and smiled coldly. Shix wore a tall crown inlaid with gems and a red robe. His body was filled with gentle holy light and he was filled with supreme majesty. He said with a slightly angry face. Everyone in the world is sinful. Only by serving the Heavenly Father devoutly can one be redeemed. He's purifying you and helping you ascend to heaven. It's out of kindness. He suddenly slammed the scepter in his hand and assumed the posture of a red-robed bishop. He was full of arrogance and bossiness. You stole the treasures that belonged to the Holy See and killed people. This is unforgivable. He seemed to be a high and mighty judge while Zhang Tian was a criminal. He ordered loudly, "You are a criminal." He shouted loudly, "Now I order you to return all the treasures and come to our monastery to repent sincerely for 10 years. Then the Heavenly Father will forgive you." It was rumored that Zhang Tian was very powerful. He also knew that Zhang Tian had defeated the Covenant of Darkness. However, Shix felt that he could suppress Zhang Tian. He was a servant of the gods, and the cultivation methods he practiced were not to be underestimated. They were passed down by the true gods and were the orthodox way of all cultivation. He was not something that the vampires and werewolves could compare to. In his opinion, even blood ancestor Cain would not be a match for him. What could Kong Techu prove by defeating Cain? Most importantly, he believed that the Holy See and the true gods behind him were people that Zhang Tian did not dare to offend. The Holy See's foundation was too deep. There were 9 top-notch monasteries in various European countries, with many hidden gods overseeing them. It was said that the true god they worshipped had been manifesting recently, as if he was going to reappear in the world. No matter how strong Zhang Tian was, how could he dare to challenge the Holy See, which had more than 2,000 years of history? Hand over the treasures and kneel for mercy. Sinner, how dare you challenge the dignity of the Holy See? Do you want to die? Do you really think you're a god? You're just a demon. If you dare resist, the Holy See will kill you. What kind of demon is he? The Holy See has already awakened and the true God has appeared. He's just an ant not worth mentioning. Seeing Zhang Tian's attitude, the paladins, priests, guards, and the like seemed to have gained a lot of confidence. They became arrogant and began to scold him. Forgive my ass. Do I need your forgiveness? Zhang Tian found it very funny. He casually waved his hand as if he was swatting a fly. Smack. Before he could cast any of his many holy spells, the scepter in Shik's hand, which had been blessed by the Pope, was shattered by Zhang Tian. He flew out like a dead dog, slamming into the stone wall and sliding down slowly. His head was broken and blood dripped down. His face was covered in dirt and he was in a sorry state. You dare to attack a red-robed bishop? Are you crazy? Villain. This villain should go to hell. Many of the Holy See's powerhouses were dumbfounded, unable to believe it. That was a red-robed bishop. Red-robed bishops, also known as cardinals, were the Pope's trusted aides. They had the right to elect and be elected the next Pope. Their status was even higher than the chief bishop of a country's highest clergy. In the Middle Ages, red-robed bishops were existences that could speak on equal terms with the emperors of large countries. They were even more shocked that Shix could not resist at all. One had to know that he was a true saint, with all kinds of divine abilities and holy spells that were mysterious and powerful. It was not something that ordinary people could imagine. But now he was actually swatted away by Zhang Tian like swatting a fly. Don't let him go. The power of faith was great. Even though they knew that they were no match for Zhang Tian, the Holy See closed in on him, brandishing their weapons. Today we must kill this demon to protect the supreme dignity of the Holy See. They cast all kinds of holy spells, their faces ferocious and resentful, as if they could only vent their hatred by tearing Zhang Tian into pieces. Chapter 798. Clap, clap, clap. Zhang Tian flicked his fingers and killed the 3 adjudicators and paladins in the blink of an eye. But this counterattack made him even angrier. Clang, clang, clang. A paladin sounded the gong in his hand angrily. This meant that an intruder had appeared and everyone had to fight. Instantly. The hundreds of experts of the church who were scattered around the treasure trove were all shocked, and they rushed toward the entrance of the treasure trove, fighting to be the first to attack. If you want to die, I'll grant you your wish. Deep in Zhang Tian's eyes, the purple rings around his pupils expanded and there seemed to be tiny purple lightning flashing. A great battle was about to break out. Suddenly, Shixin raised his hands and got up. He shouted with a pale face, "Stop! You can't fight with His Excellency Kong Techu. Master Kong, please have mercy." "This, Bishop, are we just going to let him go like this? Inside are all the treasures left by the Holy See." These powerhouses of the Holy See were all unwilling to give up. Shixin ignored his subordinates and bowed deeply. He looked at Zhang Tian with a warm expression. "His Excellency Kong Techu, since these treasures were obtained by you defeating the Blood Tribe, please take them away." He even lowered his voice and said, "We have offended you today. Please forgive us. You know what's good for you. If you knew what's good for you, you wouldn't have been slapped, right?" Zhang Tian smiled lazily and walked out with large strides. "Bishop, why should we give in? These treasures belong to the Holy See. How can we let him take them away?" After Zhang Tian left, an adjudicator said unhappily, "The Holy See has a history of nearly 2,000 years. We have a deep foundation and countless powerhouses. Recently there have been miracles in many monasteries. The true God is about to descend. Why should we be afraid of Kong Techu?" A paladin shouted angrily. "You and I are no match for Kong Techu. We can't afford to offend him." Shix shook his head and grimaced. "You don't know what I just saw." When he looked into Zhang Tian's eyes, he felt as if his soul had been sucked into Zhang Tian's bottomless spiritual power. At that moment he saw Zhang Tian riding a beast larger than the solar system and traversing the depths of the universe like an ancient divine emperor. He saw that strange beast opening its mouth and swallowing a sea of stars and billions of living beings. That kind of scene was simply too shocking. It caused his heart to palpitate and his soul to almost be destroyed. Why would such a terrifying image appear in my mind? It's like the end of the world. Shix's face was pale and he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. His expression gradually became serious. Could this be a divine omen or some kind of apocalypse? I have to report this matter to the Pope. Perhaps a demon has appeared in the Middle Lands. Zhang Tian and Hera met up with Meryl and had a simple meal together in a small town with a beautiful environment in Switzerland. Observer Meryl and many other informants had long been hidden in Europe, monitoring the movements of the various families supporting the Gathering of Darkness and reporting to Jiang Tian at any time. After all, Jiang Tian had too many people. Even if the European Union suppressed the news, it would still spread, and some families would have already fled. Jiang Tian also had to expend a lot of effort to search with his divine sense. After all, Europe was not small and Jiang Tian's divine sense could only cover a single city. However, with Meryl and the others following and monitoring and reporting to Jiang Tian at any time, it made things much easier for Jiang Tian. In truth, Jiang Tian had long reached the level of fasting and could go without food or water for several years. However, Hera had not reached that level and Meryl had long since been starving. Master Kong, I'm afraid you'll have a grudge with the Holy See this time. Hera sighed as she tasted the red wine from the Bordeaux chateau. Pa, so what if I have a grudge? I've already fought the Gathering of Darkness. Do you think I'm afraid of the Holy See? Jiang Tian said disdainfully. Do you know that the black-robed priest might be a direct descendant of St. Paul? Hera looked serious. So what? Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes. It was not the first time he had heard of St. Paul's name. It was said that St. Paul was the last saint of the West, which was equivalent to the cultivation of an eastern sky immortal. The remnant soul of the deity of Nine Swords had also mentioned that he had once traveled to the west and met St. Paul. However, that was almost 1,000 years ago. Even if St. Paul was a true sky immortal, he was only at the third level of foundation establishment. He would definitely not be able to last 1,000 years. He said calmly, I'm afraid he's already a pile of bones. Do you think he can jump out of his grave and fight with me? No. Hera said with an unprecedentedly serious expression. We've also seen the Gathering of Darkness this time. Cain and the others have the power comparable to nuclear weapons. But Cain, the steppe wolf ancestor and many other overlords of the Gathering of Darkness still haven't dared to show up for a few hundred years. It's probably because St. Paul isn't dead and they've been warned by him. He's not dead? Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes. Hera's pretty face was grim as she said. He's been sleeping in the tomb of the Holy See for 1,000 years. But I heard that there has been a holy light in front of the tomb recently. There seems to be a sacred site. Some old cultivators went there to worship and bathe in the holy light. They were able to recover their youth and become young again. He's not dead? Doesn't that mean he has a lifespan of more than 1,000 years? That's unbelievable. Meryl widened her eyes in disbelief. Ever since she submitted to Jiang Tian and joined the intelligence department of Tianqing School, she had opened the door to a new world. For example, werewolves, kindred and supers. But it was the first time she had heard of an old monster that had lived for more than 1,000 years. Even the blood ancestor Cain didn't have such a long lifespan. It was said that he was less than 1,000 years old. He hadn't died for 1,000 years and the holy light he emitted could even rejuvenate people. He wasn't human at all. He was comparable to a real deity. Jiang Tian's eyes focused slightly as he nodded and said, What you said isn't impossible. Actually, that old fellow Situ Shao should have died already, but he used the method of blood condensation stopping lifespan to live until now. Blood coagulation technique? It was the first time Hera and Meryl had heard of such a technique. Blood coagulation technique is also called blood stopping lifespan. In short, it's a bit similar to the turtle breathing technique of the Eastern cultivation world. Jiang Tian explained. Turtles and old turtles can lower their breathing rate to a very low frequency and have abnormally slow metabolism. It's fine even if they don't eat for a while. Blood coagulation technique might be a bit more advanced, but it's about the same as the turtle breathing technique. Using the arcane technique to lower one's energy and vitality to the minimum without losing energy and vitality, it can increase one's lifespan by 100 times. It's very similar to the hibernation technique. Meryl clicked her tongue in wonder. She felt that it was very advanced. That's right. That's how it works. Situ Shao and the others were born in the year of the tortoise. Jiang Tian said calmly. Situ Shao, who was far away in the headquarters of the Hong sect in Canada, shuddered. Who's scolding me? It's just a legend. Hera shook her head. There have been many legends about deities around the world recently. It's a challenge for the Holy See, but it's also an opportunity. Maybe they purposely created such rumors to shock the world and confuse their believers. St. Paul and the other holy sages from 1,000 years ago were too far away from the current overlords. Even the existence of holy sages and divine immortals was just a legend. Even Hera, the current head of the Palace of Gods, was not sure. However, although I'm not sure if St. Paul is still alive, there are 9 Saint Kings in the 9 monasteries. That's for sure. Hera said. Each of the 9 monasteries has a red robe cardinal. Each red robe cardinal has reached the level of Holy King, which is comparable to an earth god. They are on par with Situ Shao. Under the leadership of the Roman Pope, the 9 monasteries are supported by 9 constitutional monarchies, including England, Spain, Switzerland, and Norway. With the religious tribunal as the blade, they control the entire Western world. Even now they still have a strong influence. The gathering of darkness is no match for them. 9 holy kings. If I had encountered them before entering the sword vault, I might have been at a disadvantage, Zhang Tian said with a half-smile. It turned out that Zhang Tian had asked Hera about the Holy See, but she was secretive and hesitant to speak. At that time Hera was still closer to the Holy See. But now, the Palace of Gods had been utterly defeated by the gathering of darkness, and the Holy See had not done anything from the beginning to the end. This made her stand firmly on Zhang Tian's side and tell him all the information. Master Kong, I only know now that you are the savior of the world, the Messiah. Hera's face was a little ashamed. I have a feeling that things are not peaceful recently, as if there is a great change in the world. At this time only you can turn the tide. So, you still have to be careful of the Holy See. It's best if there is no direct conflict. If they don't cause trouble, I won't bother with them. Zhang Tian nodded and smiled. After Zhang Tian came out of the sword vault, he was not afraid of the Holy See at all. His Abhijna of sun and moon, purple lightning blade, and ancient god demon slayer sword were all prepared for the Holy See's earth-level deities. The remaining forces of the gathering of darkness in Europe have been wiped out. Master Kong, where are you going next? Meryl asked after finishing the simple meal. I'm going to America. When Zhang Tian said this, Meryl and Hera's expressions changed drastically and they looked at Zhang Tian in disbelief. Master Kong, if you go to America they will definitely be alerted and even use nuclear weapons, Hera reminded him with a changed expression. An overlord who had surpassed the immortal state like Zhang Tian had long been watched by the intelligence agencies of the major countries in the world. Zhang Tian's every move affected their sensitive and fragile immortal state. Especially America. After World War II, the war against the immortal state was led by America. Among the countries in the world, America's attitude was the most resolute and they used the most modern troops and weapons. If Zhang Tian's trip to America was discovered, who knew what kind of huge waves it would cause? Chapter 799. Nuclear weapons might not be able to kill me. Besides, they wouldn't dare to use them so easily, Zhang Tian said calmly. As long as Zhang Tian was in the United States, they wouldn't dare to use nuclear weapons, especially when he was in a big city. Nuclear weapons were too powerful and the pollution would last too long. So far, no country had ever used nuclear weapons on their own soil. If any politician dared to use nuclear weapons on their own soil, their political career would be over. His political career was completely over and even his regime was about to collapse. He was beaten to death by the people. This was also the reason why many big countries wanted to nurture super strong organizations, instead of simply killing them with firearms. Master Kong, you've killed thousands of people in Europe. That's enough to deter them. Meryl said worriedly, I don't think there's a need to go to the United States and kill them all. It's too dangerous. No, I'm not acting on impulse. I have my reasons, Zhang Tian said calmly. After getting the explosive crystals, Zhang Tian wanted to go back to Sidonie to test the Super Dharma artifact, the Quillian. If the Quillian was successful, it would be the ultimate deterrent. Even the United States would be suppressed and no superpowers in the world would dare to provoke Zhang Tian. If that was the case, Zhang Tian would be able to fight all over the world without any worries, moving unhindered and searching for resources. He would be able to find resources to explore the ruins of deity and other secret lands to lay the foundation for breaking through to the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment. Zhang Tian was very eager. Zhang Tian didn't even care about the families in Canada and the United States that supported Sidonie. But then Zhang Tian thought about it and decided that he had to go to Canada, especially the United States. The Kuelian was more powerful than nuclear weapons. The superpowers in the world, especially the United States, were very cautious about nuclear weapons research. They wanted to eat flesh and skin. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Kennedy was determined to stop it even if it meant using thermonuclear weapons. If Zhang Tian wanted to build the Kuelian system, how could the superpowers in the world like the United States just stand by and watch? In 1962, in order to prevent the Soviet Union from supporting the deployment of offensive missiles in Cuba, under the escort of 68 Air Force squadrons and 8 aircraft carriers, the huge UA fleet of 90 warships formed an arcade from Florida to Puerto Rico and sealed off the Cuban waters. The U.S. missile force was ordered to be in a state of high alert, and the missiles were waiting for orders on the launch pad. The United States had assembled the largest landing force since World War II to prepare for war, and U.S. military bases around the world were also on alert. Their swords were drawn and bows were bent. They were preparing for a global nuclear war. At that time, the situation was so tense that it was almost unbearable. The shadow of nuclear war loomed over the entire Caribbean Sea, and the entire world was in danger. If Zhang Tian wanted to test the Kuelian, then it was very possible. The United States' response was even more intense than the Cuban Missile Crisis. They even used nuclear weapons to destroy the Cuban Missile Crisis. Zhang Tian had cultivated for tens of thousands of years and had the mentality of an old demon. He understood one thing. It was fine if he didn't intimidate them, but once he did, he had to make them tremble in fear and not have the slightest intention to resist. If he didn't intimidate them enough, they would definitely attack them with even crazier hatred. It was just like how Nie Mingyuan showed off his abilities everywhere and reorganized the Covenant of Darkness. He seemed arrogant and domineering, as if he could even suppress the European Union, but in fact, it was an insufficient deterrence. The European Union wasn't really afraid of Nie Mingyuan, but they wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife. The second after he killed the Tianqing school, the European Union coalition forces must have launched a volley of missiles and fighter jets, blowing Nie Mingyuan and the Covenant of Darkness into pieces. Zhang Tian's test firing of the Kuelian was the ultimate deterrence. But before that, Zhang Tian had to develop and test the Kuelian system smoothly to intimidate the American politicians. Although Meryl was very worried, she didn't dare to disobey Zhang Tian's insistence. She could only cooperate fully and help Zhang Tian forge an identity and a shield. She also investigated the names, photos, residences, and recent itineraries of the American politicians and handed them to Zhang Tian. This time, Zhang Tian didn't bring anything except the sky-devouring magic gourd. Meryl returned to Sidoni and Hera returned to England. Hera was also very helpless about this. After the Covenant of Darkness was destroyed, the European Union used the Temple of Gods again. But Hera was very disgusted and wanted to rely on Zhang Tian to build a branch of the Tianqing school in Europe. But Zhang Tian said that Hera could play a greater role under the European Union and was equivalent to a spy. More than 10 hours later, Zhang Tian's flight landed at the Washington International Airport in the United States. When he left the airport, Zhang Tian was thinking about his next move while looking at the group of proud flight attendants around him. Although he was indifferent and quiet, he didn't want to become a stone or a monster isolated from the world. At the same time, a young girl behind her wearing sunglasses and pulling a suitcase suddenly shouted, "Zhang Tian." Zhang Tian turned around to take a look. This woman had taken off her sunglasses, revealing a charming face with a sweet smile. Han Qingli, it's you? Zhang Tian had never thought that he would meet an old friend on the other side of the ocean. Han Qingli, one of the 4 beauties of Yanjin, was on par with Li Yanmei, Song Shuangyan and Charlene. She was Han Dao's daughter. When Zhang Tian killed Han Junkai, who had forced Zhang Yilan to marry him, Han Dao, on the other hand, was as ferocious as a tiger. He tried his best to hug Zhang Tian's thigh and even gave this girl to Zhang Tian as a concubine. When Zhang Tian massacred the Lu family at Song Shuangyan's birthday party, this girl acted as Zhang Tian's companion and took Zhang Tian in. The news that Sidoni had the blood arrow orchid was provided by Lin Fengmian, but the more detailed information was found by Han Qingli's brother Han Junfeng. Later, the Han family also joined Sidoni's construction industry. With the power of Lingnan, the Han family could only occupy the second tier, but they also made a lot of money. After a year or two, Han Qingli looked more mature and elegant. She was wearing a pair of brown sunglasses and her hair was down to her shoulders. She was wearing a Prada business skirt, which highlighted her exquisite and tall figure. Her slender legs were wrapped in black stockings and she was wearing high heels, looking like a strong woman in the workplace. The last time they met was during the battle with Zhang Qianlei on Cloud Watching Mountain. It had been more than 2 years since then. Long time no see. Why are you in the United States? Jiang Tian smiled and greeted. Jiang Tian lived alone and there were fewer and fewer old friends left. Moreover, Jiang Tian's impression of this girl was not bad. Yeah, what a coincidence. Han Qingli didn't expect that Jiang Tian still remembered her. He was very excited. Who would have thought that he was the #1 person in the world and even France and the European Union were no match for him? She moved closer and lowered her voice. Master Kong, no, Jiang Tian, I'm afraid it's not safe for you to come to the United States. Her beautiful eyes curved into a beautiful crescent shape and she smiled brightly. Jinning Group has a branch in the United States. Why don't you be my assistant? With a few simple words, Jiang Tian had a good impression of her. She was aware of the potential conflict between Jiang Tian and the United States, which meant that she was very smart. She was willing to help Jiang Tian cover his identity, which meant that she was courageous. She wanted to let Jiang Tian go with her, which meant that she was quite smart. Jiang Tian gladly agreed. In fact, he was casting the curse from a distance. He wouldn't kill people easily and Han Qingli wasn't a big threat. When they got out of the airport, a Cadillac immediately came to pick them up. Jiang Tian and Han Qingli got in the car together. I hate that I didn't meet you before you got married. Grandmaster Jiang is such an amazing talent. Why did you get married so early? Han Qingli sighed in her heart. She still couldn't forget the wonderful feeling of being Jiang Tian's partner on Song Shuangyan's birthday party. She didn't know how many times she had thought about it. However, when old friends met, it was natural for them to talk about some of the people they knew in Yanjin. You really shocked everyone when you defeated Heavenly Master Zhang Qianlei at the cloud peak of Mount Yan last time. Many of the top young masters in Yanjin have restrained themselves a lot. They don't dare to be arrogant anymore. Instead, they focus on their careers and have created a few top companies. Han Qingli held up her slender fingers and said excitedly, "You're right." Song Shuangyan's best friend, Li Yanmei, tried her best to please Lu Yiting, but she didn't become the distributor of Heavenly Beauty. However, she became the distributor of a very strong product of the Tianshan Corporation in the United States and became one of the top 100 companies in the country. Jiang Tian stood at the side, not saying a word, listening silently. In fact, he only had a vague impression of those young masters and socialites in Yanjin. Charlene, one of the 4 beauties of Yanjin, has become your idol. She cried in front of her father for a long time and wanted to marry you. She even asked me for your contact information and asked about your horoscope and hobbies. Han Qingli covered her mouth and giggled. Do you want to think about it? You're the king of a country anyway. You can have a few wives and concubines. It's not a problem. In fact, Jiang Tian had even forgotten who Charlene was. However, he still said seriously. But after 100 years, a beauty will become a skeleton. If I marry them, I have to be responsible for them. I can't just watch them die 100 years later. Even a Dao reunion perfected immortal would have a lifespan of tens of thousands of years, let alone a true immortal. If a true immortal reached the level of true immortal, their lifespan would be immeasurably long. Those who could be partners with them would either be Dao reunion perfected immortals or have a special body constitution and bloodline. Otherwise, they would only turn into a pile of yellow soil and a grave of white bones. The path of cultivation was to go against the heavens and change one's fate to reach a higher level of life. If one wanted to advance bravely, how could there be so many obstacles? Speaking of this, Han Qingli also felt that her joke was a bit too much. She smiled apologetically. What are you doing in the United States? Do you work here? Jiang Tian saw that she was embarrassed, so he changed the topic. No, I'm also here on a business trip. When I'm done, I'll return home. Chapter 800. Washington was very different from other cities in the United States. For example, New York was filled with skyscrapers and bustling business centers. On the other hand, there were almost no skyscrapers above 10 stories in Washington. Most of the buildings were government offices and there were very few shops. The population was only 700,000, which gave people a cold, solemn feeling. The officials worked there but they did not live there. They lived in Maryland, Virginia, and some even lived in places like New Jersey. They drove to and from work every day. There were still many tourists during the day. On Massachusetts Avenue not far from the White House and the Capitol, Jiang Tian and Han Qingli got off the car. Like a pair of wanderers they walked while looking and chatting. A moment later the White House, the Capitol and the Washington Monument made of gray marble appeared in front of them. There were many tourists in front of the Washington Monument, taking photos as souvenirs. There were also some hidden overlords patrolling. I heard from Meryl that the Universe Shield and Blue Storm had sent their overlords to guard the White House. It's true. Jiang Tian didn't need to scan them with his immortal will to find that they were full of powerful energy. They were overlords and grandmasters. Jiang Tian looked at the white dome of the Parliament building with a solemn expression on his face. It was located on the Capitol and surrounded by beautiful gardens. It was majestic and elegant and was the symbol of the United States. The building had 7 floors and represented the tallest in the country, so the other buildings in the city were 6 floors or lower. It was also located on the Capitol, which made it look like a crane in a flock of chickens. There were more than a dozen immortal state warriors stationed in Capitol Hill and the White House's bodyguards. The ordinary guards were either mixed martial arts masters, awakened physique users, or superpowered users. There were at least a few hundred of such guards. They appeared relaxed on the outside but were tense on the inside. Although they looked like staff members and even disguised themselves as tourists, they were actually very vigilant and concealed their killing intent. Jiang Tian realized. Many overlords weren't born naturally. Instead, they relied on advanced biological technologies such as gene editing technology and bloodline modification to forcefully create them. The most ancient sects in the world today, other than the hidden ruins of deity, are the Holy See in the West and the Brahmin in India. The United States of America will never have a chance. Jiang Tian's gaze was leisurely as he sighed in his heart. But why did the United States have the confidence to directly rebuke the Holy See and order them to seal their mountains? What we rely on is our strong national strength, especially our strong technological strength. It can mass-produce experts. Back then the Holy See was in its heyday. There were countless immortal state warriors and powerful warriors. They suppressed the covenant of darkness with one hand and hunted down many vampires and werewolves until they were almost exterminated. Even the blood ancestor had been severely injured by St. Paul and hadn't dared to stir up trouble for hundreds of years. However, it was said that after World War II the immortal state warriors were hunted down all over the world. The United States deployed its battleships in the Mediterranean Sea, and the United States Secretary of Defense directly barged into the Holy See of Rome with guns in his hands. He denounced the Pope's crimes in front of him and ordered the Holy See to seal off its mountain and never interfere with the secular regime. It was said that at that time, the Pope was so angry that he vomited blood, but in the face of the powerful United States Navy, Army and Air Force, he could only keep his mouth shut and swallow his anger. The United States was indeed powerful. However, once the Coelian system was successfully tested, Sidoni's military strength would surpass that of the United States and deter the world. With that thought in mind, Jiang Tian's lips curled into a smile and his eyes turned cold. If I want to test the Coelian successfully, the easiest way is to cast the Soul Devourer death curse on them. With that thought in mind, Jiang Tian's body shook. A vast Soul Devourer divine sense rushed toward the White House like a dark cloud. The Soul Devourer divine sense was an extremely pure soul energy. Jiang Tian had obtained it from Ye Mingyuan's divine soul. Not only could it devour soul energy, but it was also an excellent way to cast all kinds of curses. At that moment, the President, the Secretary of State, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and many other senior officials in the White House felt a chill run down their spines. Strange. Why do I feel like the temperature has dropped a lot in an instant? In the President's office, President Bush frowned. Is the temperature of the air conditioner too low? I feel it too. This is too strange. It's creepy. The Secretary of State also felt very uncomfortable. It was as if a gust of cold wind had blown past. We are talking about Sidoni's Coelian. That strange-looking lump of metal. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was a little thick-skinned. He joked, maybe the Kuelian has frightened us? You know, all fear comes from the unknown. At that moment the Minister of Defense said in a deep voice, Jiang Taichu's tricks are too unpredictable. He's simply too unpredictable. We must be on high alert. The Minister of Defense, right, was already 70 years old. During the Cuban Missile Crisis he was promoted to Rear Admiral at the age of 30 and was already a senior advisor to President Kennedy. He had experienced the Cold War, commanded the Korean War, the Vietnam War and the Gulf War. He was experienced, vigorous and ruthless. He had already retired, but the crisis brought about by Sidoni forced President Bush to restart this old general. His eyes were as sharp as knives and his face was tough and resolute. He was dressed in a military uniform and his waist was as straight as a spear. He said coldly, the Kuelian is even more serious than the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is likely to be a weapon that transcends its time. Its power may exceed nuclear weapons. It is an unprecedented threat to America's security. We must adopt a more aggressive strategy. As soon as he said that, all the high-ranking officials looked at each other in dismay. They all looked at the old general of the Eagle sect in shock. Beyond nuclear weapons? How is that possible? The new director of the CIA was a dove. He smiled and said, according to our intelligence, Sidoni did not mine or import any radioactive materials such as uranium ore. But they purchased a lot of aviation metals. The Minister of Defense, right, sneered. This metal can withstand the high temperature caused by the explosion of 30 times the speed of sound in the atmosphere. Also, gentlemen, as I said, this is an unknown weapon that is likely to be more powerful than nuclear weapons. The possibility of that is very low. The Minister of Foreign Affairs shook his head and said with disdain, Sidoni's National Academy of Sciences has only been established a short time ago. They're too weak. How can they create a weapon that surpasses nuclear weapons? Even if the possibility is 1 in 10,000, we will not allow it to exist. The Minister of Defense said heavily, we can only eliminate Sidoni. There is no other way. Mr. President, Mr. Minister, I suggest that we join forces with the Heavenly Gods Corporation, activate the Universe Shield and carry portable weapons of mass destruction to eliminate Kong Taichu. General Kane stood up and said coldly with a murderous aura. Once Kong Taichu is dead, we can easily destroy the Kuelian and Tianqing school with nuclear weapons. I second that. An Air Force Lieutenant General straightened his body and stood up. Second that too. A Major General of the Army also proposed. For a moment, many of the core forces of the Pentagon stood up. They were ready to fight and their faces were determined. President Bush pondered for a moment and then nodded. Yes, at least on the surface, the Universe Shield is an organization that has nothing to do with the U.S. government. The new director of the CIA was a puppet of the California Consortium and Marshall. At this moment he frowned and said, I don't think we should start a fight. Have you seen what happened to the European Union? Kong Taichu has never shown any hostility to the United States. In fact, he is very friendly. We don't need to provoke an overlord who has surpassed the immortal state. The CIA needs to investigate further to find out what the Kuelian system is. He laughed and said, according to previous intelligence, the Kuelian system is just a landscape building. It has no destructive power. After all, there is no weapon of mass destruction in the world that has been exposed to the public like this. Do you really think it is a landscape? Are you kidding me? What kind of landscape could produce such a terrifying plasma stream with such obvious fluctuations that it could be detected from 10 kilometers away? Many Pentagon generals glared at the CIA director. This man was Sidoni's lackey and had received a lot of benefits from the Marshall family. The CIA can stop working now. Defense Secretary Wright slammed the table and said sarcastically, the CIA is just a lackey of the Marshall family. Do you want my intelligence agency to investigate you? What you are doing is treason. Don't cross the line. His powerful aura made the CIA director sweat profusely and he was tongue-tied. The defense secretary ignored him and looked at him coldly. This time the California Consortium, the Marshall family and the Congress won't be able to stop us. Because the Universe Shield didn't take a single cent from the U.S. Treasury. All their funding comes from the Celestial God Corporation. He was murderous and his eyes were firm. His voice was old but his tone was sonorous and powerful. Investigate Kong Techu immediately. Once we find him, execute the decapitation plan. Yes, sir. The general's spirits were lifted and they all stood up. The CIA director's eyes narrowed and his face paled. They were going to kill Kong Techu. How was he going to tell the Marshall family about this? I am afraid that the Pentagon Intelligence Agency is already monitoring me. This is really troublesome. After the meal, Han Qingli's beautiful eyes suddenly flashed, full of anticipation and nervousness. She knew that Jiang Tian was the kind of overlord who controlled a country and a sect. It was very abrupt for her to invite Jiang Tian to accompany her. However, she really couldn't control her love for Jiang Tian. Staying with Jiang Tian always made her feel refreshed and her heart was calm. It was as if Jiang Tian had an otherworldly aura. But he didn't expect that Jiang Tian would actually happily agree. Really? Great. Han Qingli was dazed, then she waved her fist. She was overjoyed and couldn't believe it. It was as if she had won the lottery. However, you know that the United States is very hostile towards me. If they find out about our relationship, they'll definitely kill me. If they find out, you might have to terminate your cooperation with the United States and lose this market. Jiang Tian smiled. In fact, Jiang Tian was testing. Once his Kuelian made a move, the Celestial God Corporation would have to give up and the United States wouldn't dare to make a move. In fact, Han Qingli wasn't in any danger. So what if I lose it? Han Qingli smiled sweetly and said, following closely, Grandmaster Jiang will be able to eat until his stomach is round. Don't be too greedy. Jiang Tian was relieved after hearing her words. The two of them immediately drove to New York City and finally arrived in the middle of the night. Jiang Tian looked at the night scenery outside the window calmly. The famous Wall Street was actually short, narrow, and even a little gloomy. However, this small street was the heart of the American economy. Billions of dollars were traded every day, controlling the American economy and the world's financial system. Now, Qin Jinming's One Eye Fund had a place on the same level as Morgan and Goldman Sachs. The United Nations headquarters stood on 42nd Street. Times Square was actually only the size of a palm. The 42nd Street can be said to be the epitome of the United States, full of contradictions. It's a bit absurd. Han Qingli said as they passed by. In the United Nations building, diplomats are seriously discussing the issue of world peace every day. But on both sides of the street, there are many women's shops that use all kinds of methods to attract customers. Han Qingli had a decently sized apartment in Manhattan with elegant decorations. She only lived there when she came to the United States for business. Usually it was empty, but she had a maid to clean it. After washing up, Jiang Tian went into his room and scanned the entire New York City with his divine sense. However, he didn't find any overlords suspected to be from the Heavenly Gods Corporation. The next morning, Jiang Tian received a call from Yi Zhantian. Master, I didn't do well. There was a serious mistake. What's the matter? Jiang Tian looked indifferent. Lu Xingua and Song Beishan have escaped the surveillance of the Long Formation and many agents and escaped to the United States. Before that, their assets were all transferred abroad through special channels. His tone was full of shame and anxiety. Lu Xingua used to be in an important position and has a lot of confidential information. If he leaks it to the Pentagon, it will cause a terrible loss. They're in the United States. What do the higher-ups think? Jiang Tian asked. The big shots in the sea are furious, Yi Zhantian said, but all evidence of Lu Xingua and Song Beishan has been destroyed. There is nothing we can do. What do you think? Jiang Tian asked. Of course we must kill them, Yi Zhantian said with hatred. These two betrayed our country and our people. How can we let them live? But they have now contacted the higher-ups of the United States and probably have the protection of the CIA and Blue Storm. If the Long Formation is discovered, it will be very troublesome. I'll take care of this matter. For the sake of our country and our family, I must kill these two. Jiang Tian said coldly, if you want to avenge your humiliation, you can come to me. I'm in the United States. Master, you're in the United States? Xianxia was shocked. That was the forbidden land of the dark overlords. In the past, the United States hunted down immortal realm experts all over the world. The next moment he said energetically, "Okay, I'll be there as soon as possible. Collect their bodies." Jiang Tian hung up the phone, his eyes flashing with murderous intent. In the evening, Jiang Tian and Han Qingli rushed to the venue of the Celestial Gods Corporation's investment fair. Not far from Wall Street, 16 skyscrapers were arranged majestically. Rockefeller Building. It is said that the Celestial Gods Corporation has a long history. Even the founder of the Rockefeller Corporation had received help from them. Han Qingli was wearing a black shoulder-length evening dress, revealing her snow-white back. Exuding the fragrance of expensive perfume, she was like a black rose blooming in the dark night. But the Celestial Gods Corporation is very mysterious. The specifics of the higher-ups and office locations are unknown. Most of the events they hold are supported by the old tycoons such as Morgan, Rockefeller, DuPont, Mellon, and so on. They are even proud to hold the events of the Celestial Gods Corporation. This time Rockefeller is providing the venue, DuPont is providing technical support, and Morgan is paying. It seems that this mysterious Celestial Gods Corporation has shares in these tycoons, controlling them through the shadow companies. Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes and nodded. It is even possible that he is the biggest tycoon behind the scenes in the United States, the true master of the United States. The White House and Capitol Hill are just puppets. The Celestial Gods Corporation's investment fair was held in a large hall on the 28th floor of the Rockefeller Building. "Sir, miss, please come in." After checking the invitation, the attendant led the two into the hall. The hall was resplendent and brightly lit. Elegantly dressed and courteously dressed attendants walked through it. This was an investment fair aimed at Wuxia. More than half of the people present were Chinese. They were still in the middle of the reception before the investment fair. There was a group of Chinese elites. The men were dressed in suits and leather shoes while the women were dressed in evening gowns. They were dressed to the nines. They were either sitting, standing, or holding a glass of red wine as they conversed in private. "Jiang Tian, why are you here?" Someone suddenly cried out in surprise. Jiang Tian turned around and saw Lu Yiting walking over gracefully with a glass of red wine in her hand. Her face was filled with joy. "You're also here for the investment fair?" Jiang Tian was surprised, but then he understood. Lu Yiting's Heavenly Beauty was one of the top cosmetics companies in Wuxia. Perhaps the Celestial Gods Corporation had taken a liking to her sales system. "The Celestial Gods Corporation has been very strong recently," Lu Yiting worriedly said. "The cosmetics they've invented are on par with our products. Even if I don't represent their products, I still want to get a feel of their foundation." Jiang Tian nodded, looked at a person behind Lu Yiting and said with a smile, "Long Xing, you're here too." "Jiang Tian, I've already successfully detoxified, although the process was very difficult. But in the end it was a success." Chen Longxing smiled at Jiang Tian. His eyes were filled with gratitude, but there were also some complicated emotions. "Right now I'm helping Lu Yiting. I'm an independent director of her company." Chen Longxing knew some of Jiang Tian's background. The current Jiang Tian was too far away from him. Just now he was hesitating whether to greet Jiang Tian or not. Who knew if Jiang Tian still cared about him? He hadn't expected Jiang Tian to take the initiative to greet him. Chen Longxing was truly grateful. "That's good." Jiang Tian patted his shoulder, feeling gratified and happy from the bottom of his heart. Chen Longxing was no fool. As a top student he should be able to shine. Chen Longxing has brought a lot of investment to Heavenly Beauty. "Well done," Lu Yiting praised. He had always wanted to use women to climb up the social ladder. He had also tried to court Lu Yiting before. Now that he had caught up with Fei Rong, it was considered a success. However, even though his family was rich, marrying Fei Rong would be considered a social climb and he would inevitably be looked down upon. Therefore, in order to keep up appearances, he often talked about how powerful his roommate, Jiang Tian, was and how he had beaten up the young master of the Lu family. But he didn't know anything else. Seeing that Jiang Tian was just an ordinary person, Fei Rong couldn't help but feel disappointed. They chatted for a while and Fei Rong asked teasingly, "Jiang Tian, I heard that you are very powerful. Where you now?" "A small country in Africa." Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Today he had come here to find out more about the Heavenly Gods Corporation, so he didn't want to attract too much attention. Fei Rong suddenly came to a realization and said, "Oh." A trace of contempt flashed through the depths of her beautiful eyes. Africa's economy was backward, its environment was terrible, and it was plagued by plagues. What future did he have there? Sidoni had developed rapidly in the past 2 years, becoming a hot spot for immigrants. However, that was only for those who had sharp eyes and quick reactions. Many people still hadn't realized Sidoni's potential. Moreover, the rise of Sidoni's country couldn't change the overall impression that people had of Africa. Most importantly, Fei Rong didn't connect the small country in Africa that Jiang Tian had mentioned with Sidoni. As for Wang Jie, his eyes widened in surprise. He raised his glass and toasted seriously. "Jiang Tian, we are very relieved and happy that Lu Yiting is able to receive your support." Everyone didn't understand what he meant, but Jiang Tian understood. He smiled and took a sip of champagne. After downing the wine, Wang Jie felt much lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Jiang Tian didn't feel any love for Lu Yiting. He only felt that they were classmates. Even so, Wang Jie's pursuit of Lu Yiting in Yanjing and his bullying of Jiang Tian still made him uneasy. Now that Jiang Tian had drunk this glass of wine, the matter was over. Given Jiang Tian's status and ability, he probably wouldn't make a fuss about it. Wang Jie often fooled around outside and tried to curry favor with the rich and powerful. With a relaxed mood, he quickly formed a small circle with Jiang Tian as the core, creating an atmosphere. It was just as Jiang Tian had imagined. The few students really looked like they were having a gathering and started chatting together. However, during this time Fei Rong went to the washroom. When she came back, she said unnaturally, "Wang Jie, a few rich heirs from Yanjing are also at the party. They were very nice to me when I was young. Come with me and give them a toast." Chapter 803. That's right. Hurry up and go. Come back after you're done talking to them. Lu Yiting also hurriedly smiled and encouraged them. In the end, Wang Jie apologized with a smile and walked over with Fei Rong. Chen Longxing shook his head and sighed after the two of them walked away. Sigh, Wang Jie's wife is not simple. Everyone could see that Fei Rong was a typical snob. She was overly shrewd, despised the poor and loved the rich. Women like her were easy to do good things, but they were even easier to do bad things. Lu Yiting smiled and said, "If we're not family, we won't enter the same house." That's not strange at all. Jean giggled down the red wine in her glass and gritted her teeth. In this world, it's impossible to climb up without backing. Her family had also gone through some changes in the past 2 years. Online shopping and logistics had been developing rapidly in the past few years. Her family's logistics company was doing well, but it was suddenly acquired by a powerful company. Later, she found out that the company was backed by the Crown Prince. If she did not sell the company to them, she could forget about running it. Jean Gidge's boyfriend also came over and added a few words. The young man was called Su Jin. He was a university lecturer who was quiet and honest. His family background was ordinary. It seemed that Jean Gidge's state of mind had changed a lot after going through so many twists and turns. She was a bit down to earth now. Han Qingli was listening from afar. Suddenly, she looked at Jiang Tian as if she was asking for Jiang Tian's opinion. However, Jiang Tian shook his head without hesitation. With his ability, it was only a matter of words for him to help his old classmates. He did not even need them to show up. It was enough for the Zhang family, the Qin family and the Han family of Yanjing to show up. Everyone has their own path in life. It might not be a good thing to tie them too tightly to me. Jiang Tian sighed in his heart. However, in less than 5 minutes, Wang Jie and Fei Rong returned in a sorry state. Although the two of them pretended as if nothing had happened, anyone could see the shame and anger in their eyes. Without waiting for Jiang Tian and the others to ask, Wang Jie shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was our wishful thinking. They didn't know us at all. Before we got close, we were stopped by a few white bodyguards. Fei Rong's pretty face turned red and white. She looked very embarrassed. She panted with anger and didn't say anything. Lu Yiting hurriedly comforted him, and Chen Longxing felt even more distressed. Back then he had been secretly harmed by his brothers in the family. He was addicted to drugs and became a cripple. That was a period of darkness where there was no light and no dignity. If it weren't for Jiang Tian's warning, he might have really been ruined. Great figures had limited energy and precious time. They would never waste any time on an ant in their eyes. Chen Longxing had tasted the pain of being ignored by others too many times, so he knew the feeling very well. Which rich heirs and socialites from Beijing? Jiang Tian suddenly asked. Lu Qiji Song Chaoyang. Not only the eldest young master, there are also several super big bosses, their fathers. Fei Rong looked at Jiang Tian in astonishment, but in the end still said it out loud. Lu Zhengguo's great-grandson Lu Qiji, Song Beishan's grandson Song Chaoyang. Next to her, Jean Gige had already screamed. Back then the Lu family's crown prince, the most outstanding Lu Lixuan, was killed by Jiang Tian with a palm of thunder. The Song family's crown prince Song Poju was also killed by Jiang Tian. But the Song and Lu families both had a long history. They had spread their branches and leaves and had already formed a colossus, a spectacular sight. In terms of talent cultivation, such a big family did not only cultivate one or two people, but also formed an echelon, cluster, and structure. It involved all aspects and was divided all over the world. Otherwise, once the heir of the family was eliminated, there would be no successor and the power would fall. Lu Qiji was Lu Lixuan's cousin. Back then he represented the Lu family in the United States, and was the backbone of the Lu family's overseas power. He was very popular in the upper class of the United States, and was able to converse with the DuPont and Rockefeller consortium. Later, Lu Lixuan was killed, and the Lu family withdrew from politics in an orderly manner, transforming into a business family. Lu Qiji returned to Yanjing, took over Lu Lixuan's position, tidied up the Lu family and turned the tide. Song Chaoyang and Lu Qiji's position and experience were similar. He was also an important spy that the Song family had airdropped into the United States in the early years. He had been immersed in the upper class of the United States for many years, and was close to General Keynes, the former director of the CIB, and many first-class politicians, and helped the United States influence some domestic policies. Oh, it's them. Jiang Tian's eyes flickered with a hint of playfulness. Lu Qiji, who is Song Chaoyang? Su Jin asked curiously. When Jean Gige finished explaining in a few words, Su Jin's face turned pale with shock. Jean Gige's family also had small assets, at least hundreds of millions, and her father was also a minister-level official. But compared to such a top family in Yanjing, they were simply like beggars. After all, the Song family and the Lu family were the top forces in Wuxia, with wealth comparable to a country, and power that could overturn the government. Hearing that it was such a big shot, except for Chen Longxing's eyes that flashed with a trace of disdain, everyone was shocked and expressed their understanding. Such a big shot was not someone that you could easily make friends with. Chapter 804. As far as Fei Rong was concerned, DuPont, Rockefeller, and Morgan had risen along with the rise of the United States. They had hundreds of years of history, trillions of dollars in assets, and controlled the economic lifeline of the United States in the world. They could control politics and influence presidential elections. In 2008 and 2009, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, and other financial institutions went bankrupt, causing a global financial tsunami. However, they had asked for help from financial giants like Morgan. Morgan's influence was comparable to the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve. With their full support, the United States and the global economy gradually recovered. Since 1929, these families had played a pivotal role in any of the world's Great Depression and attacks on countries other than the United States. From high-tech stocks to high oil prices, they had dominated every market operation after the Great Depression. They claimed to be experts in creating bubbles. No one was better at creating bubbles than them, and no one was better at detonating financial nuclear bombs, including major events such as the Dubai crisis that shook the world. Compared to such a colossus, not to mention Wang Jia and Fei Rong, even the Lu and Song clans were far inferior. They had to work hard to befriend them. When the Lu and Song families saw the DuPont and Morgan families who stood at the pinnacle of the United States and the world, it was as if they had seen royalty. How could they not treat them seriously and not let Jiang Tian and the others disturb them? How could Jiang Tian offend such a family? How could he disturb them? Let's go and take a look. Lu Yiting and Jean Gige were also anxious after hearing the explanation. They quickly ran after Chen Fan. Jiang Tian, let's forget about it. It's just a small matter. This is the United States, not China. Wang Jia was panting and sweating profusely from the chase. This was the United States, a society ruled by law. The FBI was not to be trifled with. If Jiang Tian wanted to do something, everyone would have to bear the consequences. What's there to be afraid of in the United States? Jiang Tian smiled with disdain in his eyes. In the past, Jiang Tian would not have dared to provoke the United States. After all, it was the most powerful country in the world. However, things were different now. The lives of many politicians and officials in the United States were in his hands. If they disobeyed him, he would kill them. If they dared to provoke him, he would kill them. It's over. Brother Tian's temper is rising again. Something big was bound to happen. Someone's going to die. Seeing Jiang Tian's attitude, Wang Jia only felt his legs go soft and the world was spinning. He complained incessantly in his heart. This time it was a Western-style cocktail party. It looked very equal, but in fact there was still an invisible barrier. Just think about it. Even a small class reunion could be divided into different classes. Those who did well and those who did not. What's more, this was a summit gathering. When Jiang Tian arrived at the northern area of the hall, Jiang Tian was stunned. Immediately, 8 tall and imposing men in black stood horizontally and opened their arms wide, blocking the way. Sir, what are you doing here? They were bodyguards. Their waists were bulging, stuffed with hard weapons. Their eyes were sharp and they had been through hundreds of battles. Come, let's make a toast and settle a grudge. Jiang Tian was smiling casually as he looked at the people behind the bodyguards. At the same time, Lu Qiji, Song Zhaoyang, Li Yanmei, Xiao Lin and a few other young people surrounded by Lu Zhenghua, the head of the Lu family, and Song Beishan, the head of the Song family, were chatting with a few American tycoons. The leader of the American tycoons was a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. This person seemed to be of mixed blood. He was handsome and tall, and he exuded the aura of a century-old rich family. His powerful aura could even suppress Lu Zhenghua and Song Beishan. However, there was a hint of gloominess between his brows. Mr. Morgan, let me make a toast to you. Thank you for helping the Lu family establish a foothold in the United States. Lu Zhenghua raised his glass and said with a red face. When the Morgan Financial Group entered Wuxia's financial market, Mr. Lu had given us a lot of help. Little Morgan only took a sip of red wine. He appeared very reserved as he said, "Don't worry. Especially the reform of Wuxia's banking industry and the listing of the 4 major banks, which made us a lot of money and helped us survive the financial crisis." He spoke in a graceful manner, speaking with ease and ease. The Morgan family has always valued friendship. Now that the Lu family and the Song family are in trouble, of course we have to help. Young Master Morgan Jr., well said. May our friendship last for eternity. Seeing this, Song Beishan, who was dressed in a decent tang suit, clapped his hands and smiled. The other young people such as Lu Qiji, Song Zhaoyang, Xiao Lin and Li Yanmei also smiled and applauded. It started when Jiang Tian defeated the Song family and the Lu family. With the support of the Morgan Financial Group, the 2 families began to transfer their assets overseas in an orderly manner. After a long period of time, most of the assets had been transferred. Now the 2 of them spent a lot of money and hired a retired CIA agent to help them get rid of the Wuxia agents who were monitoring them. They crossed the ocean and settled in the United States to obtain a green card. It was said that the higher-ups were furious about this and the big shots in the sea were about to issue a red warrant. But Song Beishan was not afraid at all. They had a lot of special information that was forbidden. If the Wuxia pushed them too hard, they would fight to the death and hand them over to the Pentagon in the United States for political asylum. But it was different from Song Beishan. Lu Zhenghua felt a wave of sorrow in his heart as he thought of the days of fear and anxiety. Back then he fought for the Wuxia on the battlefield and climbed to a high position. He had a high position and was a man of his word. It was for the sake of blessing the younger generation. One day one of his sons would rise to the top of the power pyramid and look down on the Wuxia. It even evolved into a martial arts family that lasted for hundreds of years. But now, under the pressure of Kong Teichu, they could only leave behind their decades of foundation and become homeless dogs. They came to the United States to seek refuge and live under the noses of foreigners, like the second Zhang Xiaoshui. Li Yanmei is my god-granddaughter. If she can marry the son of the DuPont family in the future, then we will be even closer. At this time Song Beishan smiled. Next to him, Li Yanmei was holding the arm of a young man whose aura and status were second only to Morgan. She smiled until her eyes narrowed into slits. After Song Shuangyan left Yanjin, she recognized Song Beishan as her god-grandfather and became the agent of the Song family's business. She also became the agent of the Heavenly God Corporation. Now she was on a meteoric rise and was engaged to the heir of the DuPont family. Even Morgan didn't dare to underestimate her. Congratulations, Li Yanmei. At the side, Charlene was smiling, but she felt sour and jealous in her heart. Li Yanmei was too good at flattering. Not long after she met the son of the DuPont family, she climbed into his bed and directly cut him off. Now she could only put her eyes and hope on Morgan, but she hadn't received any obvious results yet. Morgan and DuPont were too powerful. Even 10 Lu Lishuans couldn't compare. Back then Lu Lishuan had racked his brains and spared no effort to whip the entire Wuxia to prepare the Wuxia Renaissance Society. He just wanted to build a large consortium on the same level as the DuPont and Morgan. Some people's starting point is the end of your struggle. The large American conglomerates are too powerful. If it weren't for that damned Kong Teichu, Lu Lishuan might have already achieved great things. Many people thought of the past and sighed in their hearts with mixed feelings. However, they were able to come to the United States and cooperate with many large conglomerates, which started a new chapter. At this moment Song Beishan was still full of pride. With a servile look, he raised his glass and praised in stuttering English. We are small people in Wuxia. We are very grateful to have the help of the DuPont, Morgan, Rockefeller and the other young masters. Now, I propose that we toast to our international friends in the United States. Come, let's drink. Many of them were top nobles in Wuxia. Now, in front of these Americans he was like a grandson, speaking humbly and flatteringly. The white bodyguard had seen the scene of Wang Jie being chased away before. When he saw that Jiang Tian had come with him he immediately felt a little disdainful. He raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the door, saying arrogantly, "Ugly yellow monkey, this is a place where the rich and powerful gather. It's not a place for you to come. Get out of here immediately." In fact, as the bodyguard of the Morgan family, he was used to seeing the rich and powerful of Wuxia speaking humbly to a small bodyguard like him. Therefore he looked down on any Wuxia people and regarded them as inferior. He was full of arrogance. "Dog, what era do you think we are in? You still want to play the Chinese and dogs are not allowed to enter, game?" Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and a slight mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Jiang Tian had deep feelings for his country and his people. Even if he could cross the universe and break through the void to return to Earth and visit Wuxia, he would still not be able to do so. At this time, how could he allow this person to blaspheme the dignity of the Chinese of Wuxia? "Ugly yellow monkey, what did you say?" The white bodyguard was furious. He rolled up his sleeves, revealing his thick arms, and was about to attack. "Get out." Jiang Tian's eyes were full of annoyance. He didn't even make a move. He just shouted softly, "Plang." Jiang Tian was now at the foundation establishment stage. How powerful was the dragon roar and devil roar? The Caucasian bodyguard let out a muffled groan. Like a scarecrow that had been hit by a bullet train, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body was stained with blood as he flew backward and crashed onto the stage. Chapter 805. The people who came here to attend the investment banquet were all businessmen and entrepreneurs from Wuxia who had been summoned by the Song and Lu families. It seemed that a young man from Wuxia had attacked the bodyguards of the Morgan family. Li Yanmei was instantly enraged, turning her head and scolding, "What are you doing? Didn't I tell you not to do anything to Morgan?" Before she finished her words, she froze, staring blankly at Zhang Tian as if looking at a monster. At this time, everyone's back was facing Zhang Tian, and they were talking with the many dignitaries of the United States. It was very noisy at the time, so no one noticed it right away. Song Beishan was in a good mood and had drunk a little too much. At this time he looked over with drunken eyes, his gaze locked onto Zhang Tian. At first he did not take it seriously, then as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight, his eyes suddenly widened. Jiang. At this moment Song Beishan's hot-blooded lofty aspirations turned into cold sweat. And at this time, seeing that Song Beishan's face had changed, the crowd turned their head and looked at Zhang Tian. At first glance they saw that it was Zhang Tian. Li Yanmei, Xia Lin, Song Zhaoyang, including Lu Qiji, all had a drastic change of expression as if they had seen a ghost. No one thought that Zhang Tian would appear here. Where was this? The most powerful country in the world, the United States. This was the forbidden area of the strong people of the dark world. Zhang Tian dared to come here. Zhang Tian, Master Kong, why are you here? Xia Lin suppressed the shock in her heart, smiled and raised her glass. She had little interaction with Zhang Tian, and had the least conflicts, so she dared to greet Zhang Tian. Haha, to kill a few people who should be killed. Zhang Tian was calm and indifferent, as if he was discussing the price of vegetables in the market. Upon hearing this, the crowd's face changed dramatically, and then their expressions were different and their reactions were also different. Several disciples of the Song family and Lu family who had seen Zhang Tian's power on the cloud-watching peak, their teeth were chattering and their legs were as weak as noodles. You chased him all the way here? How dare you? Lu Zhenghua glared at Zhang Tian like an old wolf, his eyes filled with hatred and cruelty. After all, Zhang Tian had once killed Lu Lishuan, Lu Liwei, and a few other great-great-grandsons and even forced him out of Wuxia. How could he not hate him? However, in the depths of his eyes, there was a trace of fear that he was unwilling to admit. After all, Zhang Tian had defeated the Gathering of Darkness and was known as the most powerful overlord in the Dark World. He had killed thousands of European dignitaries and even the European Union didn't dare to resist. How could he not be afraid? Zhang Tian, how could you do this? Let's hurry back. When Wang Jie saw Zhang Tian send a person flying, he immediately became anxious and shouted with cold sweat on his forehead. However, when he saw the Wuxia bosses looking at Zhang Tian with fear, he was puzzled. Zhang Tian ignored him. He looked at Song Beishan and said slowly, "Song Beishan, you were the one who told the Gathering of Darkness about the long formation, weren't you? The Song family bullied me, humiliated me and lied to me. I defeated Zhang Qianlei and took back what you owed me, so we didn't owe each other anything. I've done my best for the Song family. However, the Song family colluded with the Gathering of Darkness to deal with my disciples and the Huaxia Long formation when I was in seclusion." Every word Zhang Tian said was like a heavy blow to Song Beishan's chest, making his face turn paler and paler. When Zhang Tian finished, Song Beishan's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He was covered in cold sweat and his body couldn't stop trembling. His legs were weak and he almost fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with fear and he stepped back in horror. "Master Kong, don't accuse me without any evidence." Lu Zhenghua was indeed a veteran who had been on the battlefield for decades. He remained calm even when facing Zhang Tian. He put his hands behind his back, straightened his body and frowned. "Besides, this is the United States of America, a society ruled by law. You have no right to speak. If you didn't do it, why did you come to the United States? Isn't it good to be a local tyrant in China? Why did you come here to be the henchman of foreigners?" Zhang Tian's face was filled with ridicule as he said lazily. His words made Lu Zhenghua and the others blush. They were so angry that they almost vomited blood. "I know you're powerful, but this is the United States of America. What the hell do you want?" Lu Zhenghua shouted. Zhang Tian's eyes fell on Lu Zhenghua for the first time. He said slowly, as cold as a knife, "Lu Zhenghua, I haven't settled the score with you yet. Didn't you tell the Gathering of Dark Creatures about the location of Mount Shuzame? Didn't you tell them about my father's schedule?" Song Beishan widened his eyes and looked at Lu Zhenghua in disbelief. "Old Lu, is this true? That's Song Shuangyan's training ground. Beishan, we're facing a powerful enemy. I'll explain it to you later." Lu Zhenghua said with an unnatural face. I, Jiang Tian, have always been vengeful and never tolerate. What's more, you've lost your integrity in your old age and become traitors to the country. Do you have the courage to resist my execution? Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes and said indifferently. Hearing this, Lu Zhenghua and Song Beishan's faces changed. They knew how terrifying Jiang Tian was. Lu Zhenghua's face was cloudy. After a long time he sighed and said, Master Kong, there must be some misunderstanding. I hope you'll think twice before you act. Investigate carefully. Besides, you're no longer a citizen of Wuxia. What right do you have to intervene in Wuxia's affairs? I'm not a citizen of Wuxia? No, although I'm not a citizen of Wuxia, I've always been a citizen of Wuxia. Jiang Tian was resolute and decisive. He snorted coldly and said, I'm going to intervene in this matter today. Do you think no one can stop you just because you've escaped to the United States? Then Morgan stepped forward with one hand in his pocket and the other holding a glass of wine. He took a sip and said proudly, Mr. Wuxia seems to have some old grudges with Mr. Lu. He said arrogantly, this is the United States. But this is America. This is a banquet held by the Celestial Gods Corporation, the Morgan family and the other two families. Please don't cause trouble here. Please leave. Seeing Morgan stand up for Qin Fan, everyone was excited as if they had found a powerful backer. Li Yanmei smiled and said, Jiang Tian, you're too naive. Do you know where you are? The United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, is not a place for you to do whatever you want. Back in Yanjin, she had been humiliated by Jiang Tian. She was scared of Jiang Tian back then, but things were different now. Of course, Li Yanmei knew Jiang Tian's strength. He could fly, burrow, and control lightning. But in her opinion, the United States of America was the place where immortal state warriors died. It was a forbidden place for overlords. Could Jiang Tian withstand nuclear weapons? Could he withstand the most powerful American army in the world? Democracy in the United States was only a sham, a democracy that belonged to the upper class. The United States of America was dominated by the Morgan family, the DuPont family and the Rockefeller family. Would he dare to provoke the upper class in the United States of America? The only consequence of provoking them was death. In fact, other than Song Beishan and Lu Zhenyu, most of the other powerful people in Yanjin had the same mentality. Seeing Morgan stand up for him, they felt relieved. They thought that Jiang Tian had to admit defeat in the face of Morgan's power. Let me out. Do you know who I am and what my trump card is? Unexpectedly, Jiang Tianli ignored her. He sipped his red wine and chuckled, I'm sorry. Even if the family leader of the Morgan family was here, he wouldn't dare to disrespect me like this. How dare a family whose life is in my hands provoke me? Do you want to die? Little Morgan probably hadn't seen his photo before and didn't know his background. Jiang Tian heard him ask Li Yanmei about his background just now. But these days he had killed so many people in Europe that blood flowed like a river. It was understandable that the other families didn't know. After all, the European Union was also very sensitive about this matter. They had blocked the news and tried to suppress it. Chapter 806. At first, little DuPont looked on coldly from the sidelines, thinking that Jiang Tian wouldn't dare to challenge little Morgan at all and would only make a fool of himself. But he didn't expect things to turn out like this. For a moment he was sweating profusely and wanted to come out and stop Jiang Tian. The bodyguards around him had already pulled out their pistols and pointed at Jiang Tian. Their eyes were as sharp as knives and they looked like fiends. It seemed that if he dared to act rashly again, he would be shot dead on the spot. Get lost. A surge of vast power surged out from Jiang Tian's body. Little DuPont and the bodyguards were blown away more than 10 meters away like withered petals drifting in the wind. Little DuPont, in particular, bore the brunt of the impact and was the most miserable. Along the way, he knocked over many tables with champagne and cold food and slid 20 meters away on the ground. His whole body was hit so hard that he couldn't move at all. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. The entire place was dead silent, not a single sound could be heard. Especially Song Beishan, Lu Zhenghua and the others. Their faces were even more shocked and their hearts were cold. No one had expected the result to be like this. Jiang Tian's attack was ruthless and unscrupulous. This was even more decisive and straightforward than when Jiang Tian dealt with the Lu and Song families in Yanjing. In Jiang Tian's eyes, the powerful American families that they regarded as their big backers were not even worth mentioning. Little did they know that when Jiang Tian was in Wuxia, it wasn't that he didn't dare to kill people. It was that he had deep feelings for Wuxia, and he also had to give face to the big chiefs of the sea and maintain the hard-won stability. If Jiang Tian didn't care about these things and showed the decisiveness of the cultivation world, Lu Xingua, Song Beishan, and the others wouldn't have been alive. The noble son of the Rockefeller family was about to step forward and stop him. This person is the legendary martial arts expert of Wuxia, and he's so young. It can't be him, can it? Suddenly he noticed that Jiang Tian didn't even come close to them before he sent them flying like scarecrows. His pupils couldn't help but constrict, but he stopped abruptly and his heart became anxious and fearful. Kong Teichu, do you think you can run amok in the United States just because you defeated Zhang Qianlei? At that moment, seeing that her boyfriend Little DuPont was beaten to a pulp, Li Yanmei was flustered and exasperated. She danced and screamed hysterically. Kong Teichu, you've already forced the Song and Lu families to leave Wuxia and head overseas. Isn't that enough? She was filled with grief and indignation. After all, Little DuPont was someone she had just climbed up to. If he was beaten to death by Jiang Tian, then all her efforts would have been for naught. The strength and background of the United States are beyond your imagination. If you really push us too far, we will use nuclear weapons. What Tianqing School? Covenant of Darkness? Only by using nuclear weapons. Everyone only felt a buzzing sound in their heads and a wave of dizziness overcame their understanding. Tianqing School. Covenant of Darkness. What is that? Fei Rong's pretty face was pale and trembling as she asked quietly. Tianqing School is the sect and dojo established by Master Kong in Sidoni. Han Qingli explained, Sidoni is the sixth most powerful country in the world. To put it bluntly, it's a country established by Master Kong. Mr. Jiang is the godfather and adoptive father of His Majesty King Arthur. He's the Supreme Emperor of Sidoni. What? He's so powerful? The Supreme Emperor of a country. Fei Rong couldn't believe it. She felt like she was listening to a book from heaven. This was too bizarre. What's the Covenant of Darkness? Was it destroyed by Jiang Tian again? At that moment Lu Yiting, Wang Jie and the others were all puzzled. Song Beishan and Lu Xinggua's older generation might be able to get a hold of such top-notch secrets, but they were too far away and had never heard of it. Not to mention them, even Xia Lin and Li Yanmei were far inferior. Their status was too low. The Covenant of Darkness is one of the most evil organizations in the world. In the Middle Ages, it once dominated Europe and controlled the royal families of several countries. It was even able to wrestle with the Holy See. But now it has been destroyed by my master Kong Teichu. As the sonorous voice sounded, a tall and imposing figure suddenly appeared at the door. Under the escort of the Dragon Group's 4 spiritual generals and the Group of 8, an awe-inspiring old man walked in with large strides. Who is he? He looks extraordinary. I can't believe he's Jiang Tian's disciple. Fei Rong looked at Yi Zhantian and asked in confusion. Yi Zhantian, the leader of the Long Formation, the champion of martial arts in Wuxia. He used to be a lieutenant general and is known as the god of war in the army. Everyone was puzzled. Only Chen Longxing had heard about it and whispered with a pale face. What? Fei Rong was dumbfounded and felt dizzy. She didn't even have enough energy. The god of war in the army, Yi Zhantian, is Jiang Tian's disciple. This is unbelievable. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Yi Zhantian's master. What did this mean? It was unimaginable and terrifying. Yi Zhantian. Even Song Beishan and Lu Xingguo were pale and sweating when they saw Yi Zhantian. Just like Blue Storm and the Covenant of Darkness were strictly guarded by Wuxia. If they went to Wuxia, they would be suppressed. Yi Zhantian and the Long Formation would never dare to come to the United States. But at this moment he actually came with great fanfare. But you don't know that we've already made friends with the United States. That you're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.